to hopefully be my replacement. Amazing lawyer who loves science more than she should. She's actually just started a graduate program in forensic science, right? In addition to all of her lawyer stuff.
Nice.
So,
I did. I'm
yeah.
excited.
I hate to see you go, Bill, but
Well, you're going to be in way better hands.
I'm glad you got the phone today too, and I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if you were
I'm
coming.
glad.
I didn't want to.
Hey.
I got so much going on.
You can sit down here by Bill.
Yeah.
Well, we try to respond to everything they ask for, but we've got a few ladies that said want all the data from 3 years prior to now to the present.
Right.
And
Right. And I think part of that is that kind of tactical trying to make you do so much that the owners, and that's one of the reasons why we just like, you know what, just put it all up.
All right, Bill, we
You
got
know,
your name
let
today.
anybody.
Oh.
Not to put raw information, that comes in the standard discovery package.
But you're
So
way up, right?
when we create, well, not the standard.
Maybe we can-
Standard discovery packet is just a
name,
report
probably not
as
the
well
police,
as the submission information that goes to the office.
If
Right,
we
but,
see
Our
that-
full discovery package includes all the instrumental data, all the records of review, all the chain of custody information, all the other stuff. That's done on, you know.
Yeah, and there's restrooms right around the corner, just to the right.
We're also
Okay.
in
Cool.
our link system is
Cool.
Forensic Advantage, and so Forensic Advantage has FA Web, which I'm sure that a lot of other
I'm
link
gonna
systems
log in
have.
and try to
a web
listen, see
service
if audio is
But
any better than.
it also has
last
the
time we were
ability
recording.
that individuals that are granted authorization can go in and request and receive discovery packets on their own. So they don't have to, go to us.
Yeah.
So the idea is that if we can give our district attorney's office, because we don't know when a case goes to trial, a lot of times we don't even have that information, like what. So our systems don't talk to each other. And so it's a really difficult process right now. They have to request it, we have to send it. It's,
Judicial guest, and then it's
multi-step process.
capital G and
What
capital
we'd like
A,
to be able to
guest
do is they
access,
just go in on their side, just do
I think it was
a just do a
pound,
search, find in
exclamation.
the case information, request a full discovery packet, and they get it without even us having to be involved. So
that work.
we'll see how that works.
Uh,
But Forensic Advantage has.
I got capital G, capital
secondary,
A.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's guest
software
access,
package
the word,
called
two words, but
All
there's a
Access.
capital G and a capital
And what
A.
that does is
Sorry.
it allows you to set
And
an
then
administrator,
pound, exclamation.
an
Yeah.
external administrator per agency, and let them administer their own individuals. Because the process
Did you
for
get
us is like, we have to sit there and
Go to
administer every
the-
person, every officer, every whatever. It becomes so weighty that we collapse.
If you want to.
Right? So instead we say, okay,
Gets access,
Sergeant
capital
over
G,
at
capital A.
SAPD, we get granted the access to administer your officers and give them the, and so, or a couple of them over at, at an agency, give them the ability to administer.
Did I say pound?
They can't
You
change
said
the
hash- you said pound, you said
All they're
hashtag.
doing is.
Oh, I
being
should,
able
I'm
to
in the
access
hashtag group.
So
Are you-
that's-
No, I think
that's
I was
our
thinking pound
process,
maybe,
what we're
but
trying to
maybe it's my
accomplish.
kids.
We're not
They
Yes.
cause me.
Oh,
Because I would
There's-
not have said
There's hurdles and
hashtag.
upon hurdles.
I probably
upon
wouldn't have
hurdles.
used it like
You know,
kids.
From
I
legality.
know.
No, like from the
TikTok,
phone?
I don't know, stuff I should have done.
It still doesn't make me cool that I
We've
know
had
that.
requests in the past where they've asked for a lot. And basically we just.
What did
say,
I see the other
we
day? It
told
was,
them,
oh, do you
this is
guys
what we can
put two
easily
spaces
provide.
after the
The
period?
other is
Yes.
we'll
Oh,
allow
yeah, it was
for
like
the-
note
the-
to everybody over 37, you don't have to put the two spaces
But
anymore.
I
want
I was gonna ask Maggie if it's true.
Whatever.
It looks.
That was prior to us having it all scanned. and
David
digitized.
Slayton used to
You know,
say,
once that
don't put
heavy
two
lift was
periods,
done,
and I
it's
was like,
easier
but
to
I've been
maintain.
doing this,
I know.
having
You know,
two spaces.
And now.
And it
another
looks
process that
messy
we're
when
trying
you
to
have
do
one.
is
And the
we're
optional
integrating
format is there for.
Lynn.
our
Yeah.
lens.
This is Angelica.
Oh, hi. Oh, hi.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much for all your help.
Sure,
I'll be right back. Capital G, capital A, pound.
The amount of trees.
There
we
you
still
go.
kill.
Exclamation.
You know, it's incremental process and we're getting there. How many of them are y'all getting? The subpoena?
Once, one every couple of weeks.
I remember Dr. Kerrigan mentioned the same thing back when they were running the lab out. They were just being hammered by discovery requests. And so with that, from the non-talk side, we haven't had that issue.
No, yeah, it is a lot of calls that have been passed on. Some of them are reasonable, but some of them I think are unreasonable. But it's really obviously just doesn't make your life difficult.
Right.
Should we see if the other people can hear us? Emily, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, very good.
Can you wait on Lynn before I get? called
Yeah,
to
she
order?
said she needed to go to the restroom. We're already recording though, so we got.
We can hear you, Emily.
Okay.
Or is it still the same house kind of? Yeah. We've been old school for a long time. You know, I mean, we're trying to move into the 20th century.
So we're using Pennsylvania as well, but I think we were using the FA reports modules that they have, the web-based module, trying to get our counts, our stats and stuff like that, but we're having trouble with the math. Are you guys having any issues with that?
Well, it depends on what you mean by, you know, counting of certain things. Our management reports are accurate. The only thing that is not accurate per se is like if we're trying to count the number of items, and that's only reason because of the way that we have it structured. Recreate our containers as items, so we're not counting items. So I don't really use it to count items. But like for Project Foresight or whatever, you know, for the most part, it's very accurate.
So that's been a struggle for us getting on that.
Order. Good morning, everybody. It is 10:34 a.m. on January 20th, 2022. This is the meeting for the Texas Forensic Science Commission Licensing Advisory Committee. It's good to see everybody, so I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We need to have a roll call or,
Oh, yeah.
okay. Got it.
Do you-
Give you the name.
Yeah, sorry.
We could just name
Okay.
everybody here and then.
Hines,
I'm here.
Vachon. Here. Bailey. Here.
Reek is here.
Here. Karen.
Here.
Debbie.
Here.
We have a new friend
Right,
we're
yes.
going to introduce.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Before Kelly introduces himself, I'll introduce him. Dr. Kelly Wouters is the new appointee for private laboratories, replacing, I'm blanking on, Elise
Elise.
Watts. So Elise has stepped off and Kelly is here with Armstrong, is that right? Armstrong Laboratories, and it's good to have Dr. Wouters with us, so I look forward to working with him.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So you know, Dr. Waters did some question drafting for us before, so he's familiar with some of the least enjoyable aspects of his work.
Right.
And I did want to just introduce Angelica, who's
Sure.
going to be taking over for Bill. We're very sad to lose Bill, but we're very happy that we have a new representative from the lawyer side, defense, so this is good news. But the commission will make the appointment, and then we'll switch from that point on. So it's great to see you, Bill. for the
Good to
last
see you.
time. And then we have on the line Emily Esquivel. Hi, Emily.
Here. Hi.
And Callie is on too.
Here.
Wow, this is really fancy. That we can see everyone. Neat. Okay. Where's the owl? Oh, there he is.
It actually hooted when it got.
It
Did it
did, it
really?
did.
Yeah,
Look at
it
us.
literally.
It's like warning, I'm watching you.
All right, well, this is fancy technology that OCA has given us to play with, so that's good. We're glad you guys can be here, at least online. You can go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so the next item of business is to review and adopt the minutes. I'm assuming that everybody has had a chance to review the minutes. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? If there's no discussion, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes?
Donna, I move to adopt.
Thank you. Moved by Donna. Is there a second?
Yeah, that's second.
Second by Deb. Okay, so got a motion and a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are adopted.
Rodney, did you want to give the presentation on the licensee update?
Sure, good morning. I'll be glad to. Do you want me to share my screen or?
Yeah, that'd be great if you can.
Okay. Can everybody see it?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Glad to see you guys. Sorry I couldn't be there today.
Okay.
Okay, this is going to be current data as of the stats from January the 3rd of this year. Current licensee total stands at 1,309. This is a number that makes up from 5 different license types: non-interpretive, provisional, regular, uncommon forensic analysis, and temporary.
Rodney, can I interrupt you for a second? We can't, so our view is on the, like the cover slide. But we don't, can you do presentation mode or whatever? Yeah, from beginning and then maybe you have to hit present online. Is that, what do you think, Lee? To
Play
get it-
from start should just do it.
It's not, though, I don't think.
When I do that, it pops up on a different monitor. So let me,
That's what it
Yeah.
is. He's sharing the other
Yeah.
monitor.
Oh, he's got 2 monitors, that's right.
I've got more than that. I'll give myself a headache
Okay.
looking at all
If
these
you
things.
can scroll to the next slide, we'll be able to see it.
And maybe unclick
Okay.
this presenter view.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's still.
Just go to the next slide, like as you're scrolling through the slides, you have to manually open the slides, I think.
Say again, I didn't understand you, Lee. I'm sorry.
Can you scroll down to just go to slide 2?
Like that?
No.
We don't see it. We don't see any action.
Yeah,
He's doing it on a different screen.
you may want to unshare and then
There you go.
reshare.
There it is.
Okay, maybe it's just taking its sweet time.
Whatever you just did worked. We're on slide 2 now.
Okay, we'll try that. Slide 2. This is going to cover the different disciplines for non-interpreting licensees. That total is at 270. These group of licensees are not expected to renew or upgrade or expire until November later this year, 2022. Provisional licensees are standing at 7. This is as a reminder, a 1-year provisional term. We're expecting these licensees to either upgrade to full licensure or expire by February, April, May, June, July, August, and September of 2022. The next 3 slides, 4, 5, and 6, will cover our licensees for regular. These include also technicians and analysts. This group makes up the largest piece of our licensee pie at 1,027. This number also covers 26 different disciplines and discipline combinations as follows. To date, we've had 81 regular licensees renew for the term 2021 to 2023. And for the other term for 2022 to 2024, we've had 5. Projected licensees that are eligible to renew for the remaining of this year for the next 2 years are as follows for these months. As you can see, we're going to be hit pretty hard toward the latter part of the year for October, November, and December. Are there any questions about what's been presented so far?
One question that I have to make it easier for you guys for the end of the year, would it be helpful if we at least get our stuff in prior to that so it can be reviewed? So it's not just a big bolus to be reviewed at the end of the year?
Renewals can start as early as 60 days within the expiration date. So if you have a licensee that's going to be expiring in October, they can renew as early as August or start the process. And yes, that would help.
I mean, the more time we have, the
Mhm.
easier it is. But I feel like this has happened every 2 years since.
This is the
we-
cycle from the initial.
Yeah, from the
license.
very beginning. So we just sort of brace ourselves, mostly Rodney braces himself, but we get through it, like, you know, we'll all pitch in, or I, you know, especially Catherine and Lee, and now we have Maggie. We didn't have Maggie last time, so that should be helpful as well.
I thought y'all did a fantastic, I thought y'all were really responsive when everybody was going through it last time. So, I mean, it can only get better, right?
Yeah, I mean, the run-of-the-mill questions, like the easy things to resolve, I think, get resolved pretty quickly. I don't know, Lee, do you have any suggestions about how to make it easier, or just?
No, I mean, the licensees are gonna get individual notices about the expiration of their license at 90 days. And then again at 60, 30, 15, and 10. So they'll be getting those individual notices, and I think that we'll probably send out a notice to the labs, just to remind everybody that the bulk of your licensees. And remember, not all licensees now are on that same 2-year schedule that your original
Right.
licensees are, so we do have a number of them that renew in the off year, which is actually nice for us. But yeah, so we will be renewing the bulk of them this year, and we'll help usher that process along, I think, starting in August, probably. As soon as we can, we'll start.
You can go ahead, Rodney.
Okay, thank you. The other licensee group would be for the uncommon forensic analysis. We still stand at only 3. It involves 1 lab, independent forensics. The renewal or expiration for these guys are not expected until November of this year, 2022. And lastly, temporary licensees still stand at 2. That hasn't changed from the last meeting. Also involving just 1 lab, Microtrace LLC. These are not expected to renew or expire until February 2023, and the other one, June of 2023. Are there any questions, comments, or anything I can add to help understand what we're doing here?
Seems pretty clear.
Okay, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and let y'all have it back.
Thank you, Rodney.
All right. I think the other thing in agenda item 3 was just talking about the database project. So it's been, and we meet twice a week, every single week, and they've got 4 programmers on it, like full time right now, or at least 3. And I think scheduling wise, it's supposed to, Lee, you put the timeline in, right?
Yeah, the timeline's in here. I can go over it.
So they're
Just summarizing.
finishing up writing the code, and then they have to do what's called internal testing. And then we'll test it, and then the labs will test it, and then it'll be launched. But they really feel like we're gonna have a lot of progress in February and March, and that by the time we're at our next meeting, we'll be able to actually see it, like a demo of it at a minimum. So it's gonna have everything that we do is on there. It's gonna be really great, like all the labs, accreditation status, history, all that's in there. Same thing for licensees. You can search by questions such as, does the lab do defense work or not? Like all that sort of stuff. And then we'll have, complaints, disclosures, our reports, all the OSAC compliance stuff is going to be built into there, and the quality incident databases so that the labs can, upload what they are currently maintaining on their own websites into this system. So you don't have to maintain them separately anymore. You just put the stuff up there yourselves, so, which is nice. And those are, it's all 6 of those different fields, and they're rolling them out like one at a time. So the first thing is the 4 core things that we do, right? Like investigations and self-disclosures, having a way to submit those online, truly online. Not just like a fillable PDF, but like a real robust process. And then porting all of our licensee data, porting all of the lab data over. So that's going to be the first thing that comes up. And then from there, the QIs and the OSAC stuff. So yeah, we're excited. We're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel on that. It's just quite a complex thing to build in, actually, because they're building in both what we see and how we manage it, and what's facing the public, and what the lab users have access to. So it's like 3 different steps. So each of the labs will designate a couple people who are able to log into the system and make certain changes to your own profile, to information that the lab displays about itself to the world. And some of that stuff will have like a stop with us. In other words, you put it in, it comes into Lee's queue or Catherine's queue. They look at it to make sure it looks good, and then it gets, so these are like various programming steps that they've had to go through. And we have to make sure that there's like appropriately tight security for all the lab users. That's why I think we've asked you all for, did we ask who all the authorized users are?
Not yet.
So like, for example, they code it to where you can't log in donnahudaily@yahoo.com. You have to log in from like recognized
.gov or whatever.
from your, the
Lab
end,
account.
it has to be HFSC. So all that stuff, but we're excited about it because it's going to be super fancy when it's done.
Hopefully.
It's supposed to be. I mean, these people are really, really smart. Like they think about a million things. Like, can a person be provisionally licensed in firearms if they're already a seized drug analyst? And like, they just ask us 5 million questions. We're like, well, nobody's ever going to do that, but technically I guess it's possible. So then they have to program that in,
Right.
Or, and sometimes we've had to go back to the labs to say like, here's a hypothetical scenario that the programmers are positing. Is it something you need or not? And generally we've gone to DPS to ask, just because we feel like they're going to have the greatest possible variety of scenarios, but so we'll see. It should be good when it's done. We're getting a little impatient, I'm not gonna lie, but we're hoping by April we'll have made a lot of progress. And thank you to the people who volunteered, Emily, to pilot it. What was the time frame that he said
The piloting for the labs is not gonna happen till April.
Yeah,
like mid-April.
it'll be the last thing before it hits for everybody. So in April, is when you're probably gonna be piloting. So I don't know why I'm yelling at her like that. Can you hear though? Like, I feel like.
We can hear it easy.
Oh, really?
It's
Wow.
loud, the sound.
It's fine.
Okay, cool. All right, that's all we got on that.
Okay, anything else on agenda item 3? If not, we'll move to item 4, review any outstanding statistics course evaluation requests. Discuss available statistics course options, including the Institute of Forensic Research Training and Innovation Statistics course launch. Lee?
Aaron has reviewed quite a few stats course equivalency. He's had to evaluate several courses that we've rejected more recently, right? It
Mhm.
feels like we've done a lot of them, but we don't have any outstanding today that we haven't already made a decision on. But we did want to also highlight that the Institute for Forensic Training and Innovation has launched their stats course, and you can go to our website to click on the link to get there. It's hosted by Sam Houston State University's training program for forensic scientists, and there's a specific stats course for forensic analysts that you can take that will fulfill the component for statistics.
Now, for those individuals that have been rejected for that, they still have a year to cure that, correct?
They can get a provisional license. Once they're licensed provisionally, they have a period of 1 year to complete the course.
And I noticed, because I clicked on it, that course costs $500. And I remember us talking at some point about the commission helping. Is there a method for that, or?
We may have some funds available.
Okay.
We could talk about that. We have to look at our budget probably.
I
I
should
can
know if there was a
write
way
down-
for people to even request.
Yeah, there's not yet, but
Okay.
we did talk about that, so we probably just need to look at the budget and see how much we might have available to help people out and how we might select the people that do it.
You guys are asking for money. That's what I heard from the kitchen.
I was just wondering if there was a mechanism for people to request for
Yeah.
assistance in paying. for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, so I only know, because I often hear people asking for things from the kitchen since they have a 4-year-old. He's good. So, yeah, we really want to support people in taking the course. So if there's any, we don't have an IAC in place with Sam yet, but we do plan to put one in place. But for right now, if you have people who are interested and but for the $500, they're not taking it. Did I say that right? My brain's kind of fried. Then
Makes
call,
sense.
then reach out, because the legislature thankfully put, based on the recommendations of the General Counsel for the Judiciary, where we fall under, they added a specific provision that says that we can use our funds for the purpose of training forensic science, like specifically our general revenue. Which means that, yes, we can do that. Before, we wanted to fund people, and she had raised the concern about it not being specifically in our enabling statute. So now we should definitely be able to help with that. Ideally, what we'll do is get an interagency agreement with Sam where we just pay them. Like they let you all in and we pay, so that the student doesn't have to really do anything.
They don't have to get reimbursement. That's
But
just
for
paid
right now, I would definitely suggest just reaching out to us directly, because I think Sarah's first priority was getting the course established online, the sign up, all that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, at this point, if we were gonna fund, it would probably have to be through like a reimbursement mechanism until we can get that IAC in place. Can you make a note about that we need to do that too, like after the meeting?
And would that be only for people who it's required for?
Or
Or
they would have priority.
Okay, because I know I have one staff member that it's like, she's grandfathered in, but she really wants to take it. I'm like, I don't think I can get you TFSC funds for
Maybe.
that. Maybe it's in my budget, I don't know.
So Peter can find the money.
Peter can. You're right,
I'll just
yeah.
have to- We'll just have to, he'll find it. No, but like seriously, if people want to take it, if you have people who want to take it just because they're highly motivated, we want to encourage that. But if I had, $1,000 and 3 people who needed it and 1 person who just wanted to take it, I mean, we would give the money to the people
Yeah,
who need it.
Absolutely. That should happen.
But yeah, definitely, we'll figure out how to do it. And that applies for everyone, you know, and we'll probably send something out to the tablet in that regard. We don't have quadrillions of dollars, but we do have money and we have income from this program that we should use to benefit the people who are in, you know, directly benefit them. So, yeah. Is that a common thing that people are asking to do it?
No.
No, not so much.
I think our concern in fire art specifically is that with the advancement of 3D,
Yeah,
there's gonna be stats, and that's just not something we have strengths in, so, or in general.
right, it's, you might as well get ahead of it. And then the same thing is actually true with C-Safe. We want to set something up with them. We haven't done it yet, but if we had C-Safe plus the SAM course plus NMS was going to set one up in their foundation, like school partnership they have with their local university. And I'm not certain, but I feel like with NMS, it might be a little more tilted toward like the talks side. So if that were true, then people could choose which course they want to take sort of based on what examples are used, what, you know, like which one would I
Right.
benefit most from
Yeah,
taking?
because, you know, C-Safe is definitely,
Oh, they got the
Impression,
firearms,
right?
I mean,
Impression
they got the,
evidence,
that's
so-
what, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you'd probably rather take that in a sense, if that's your area of focus, so.
once they get it.
Yeah, so, yeah, feel free to reach out for people who need funding help, for sure. We want to support people in that. And better than me just the other. I should take it. I think it's Patrick Busini who teaches it. He's so smart. Yeah. He's great. Okay,
Okay.
I think that's it for.
Nothing else
4.
on number 4? Number 5, and I'll be honest, I've been slacking on this one. Discussing progress on development of new study materials and test questions for piloting the General Forensic Licensing Exam 2. Discuss and make recommendations regarding the exam analysis by ACS psychometricians.
So for the general forensic analyst licensing exam 2, we're short on questions, as you know, because I sent an email out about it this week. So we're going to work on that. Staff hasn't really put a lot of time into that yet, just because we've been busy with so many other tasks. So I plan on working on that next week.
Yeah,
to help
we can
contribute
help
my
write
questions.
It was
I'm
hard.
really having-
It is hard.
I'm struggling with
Really
professional
hard.
development because either it's just too obvious
Right.
or it's too subjective.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm struggling. Stats was easy. I got that knocked out, but the professional development or responsibility, sorry, I'm struggling.
Well, we
I have
can,
several questions, but it was really hard whenever, whenever you want to do oh, here's a great question. All of these are blah, 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 except for, oh, wait, I can't. do
Yeah, I
that.
can't use that. I
Exactly.
can't use that.
And then
I'm like,
it's hard to
I-
reverse it.
Yeah, I was like, how do I rewrite this? That was the most difficult part, I think.
yeah,
Mhm.
well,
I come up with a woman. And it probably stinks.
Yeah.
I have some comments, I'm like, I hate this question.
But you're right,
I
even
hate
the
this
questions
question.
I submitted, I was like, I don't know, these are great. I was like, other people are getting like,
So I followed Deborah and I thought your questions were actually pretty good, you know, and so then I was trying to like come up with some, and it was just hard whenever like, when you were trying to put in those extra answers in there, just so something that wasn't
Yeah.
just so obviously
Mhm.
wrong.
Yeah.
So it was a struggle.
we can help with some of them. We did quite a bit of drafting of questions the first round and also editing questions that came into us from the groups that were working on them. Because we kind of got to understanding what Jamie was looking for, but she reviews them all and she'll ding the ones that she thinks are no good. And then it's sort of a drag to have to rewrite them, but we can, but you know, they feel, I mean, that's kind of their job, and this is all based on research and
But they,
study after study that's been done on this, and it's like, but it's the worst part. Like, if I could just do a none of the above or an all of the above.
Yes.
Or like
It'd be so
anything.
much
or even just a
easier.
true false kind of a thing.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
because sometimes I could get to like 3 possibilities, but I
Yeah,
couldn't find
the
that
fourth
fourth.
is
Yes.
hard, the fourth is hard, always. I wonder if, can we ask her, can we go to 3? Is it possible to go to 3 and see?
She's
what
probably
she
gonna say
says?
we'd have to do it consistently across the.
Well, maybe we just go to 3 for all of them. The
It's-
fourth
it's-
is always
It's
the
the
real.
hard thing.
Yeah,
Because what I don't remember is whether 4 is based on research that shows that that's the most effective way to do it, or is 3?
maybe
Is,
they just have a better chance of just guessing the right answer if there's only 3.
maybe that's what
And
it
it's
is.
not
Yeah,
enough of a differentiation.
maybe.
You know, we could just do, I mean, I know that there's research and I know, you know, the whole elimination of things, and all of these are blah, 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 except this, or which of the following is not
Right.
the answer, right? Like, if we could do that, I have a whole
Right.
pocket
Way
full of
more questions that we can ask if we can have the 9.
If we just do that part, we are solid.
I just wanted to make it an essay and have Rodney.
They're pretty inflexible. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like, they really believe in these principles and they won't like psychometrically bless our exam unless we follow the principles. So we have
You're
to,
probably right.
yeah, we just have to, let's ask the question and see what she says. Like, is there any flexibility at all on the number of answers, on any of that stuff? 'Cause
Like,
it
is there,
hard.
is there a proper way to ask which of these is not true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or all of the following are blah, blah, except.
Yeah, I know what they're gonna say,
No?
because we've
Okay.
asked this, but we can go circle back and see.
Or maybe we can help each other too, because I know I submitted one that only had 3 answers, because I could not think of that fourth
Well,
one.
that's
But someone
not a bad
might
idea.
actually be able to
Yeah,
just quickly add a
yeah.
4th one in there that I never. even
That's a
thought
good
of.
idea, Sandy.
So-
Like, if you can write them and get to 3, give us the 3. And Lee and Robert and I will, and Maggie, will all sit there and scour our brains for what a 4th could be. Like, that way you don't sit there spinning your wheels on a single question, feeling desperate about, I can't do this. This whole assignment is ridiculous. Why did I sign up for this gig in the first place? And then it's like, I quit. I'm just not gonna do it. I'll come back to it later. And then later never comes, you know? So give us 3 and we'll try to work out the 4th for you. Let's do that, actually.
I'm not gonna
Especially
help.
if you feel good with the rhythm of the 3 and you're getting questions done, let's just do that and we'll help with the. with
I
the
intentionally didn't look at anybody else's questions, but I can go back now and look and maybe that'll inspire me to.
Well, that's what I was kind
Right,
of also
more.
thinking, is I know that you guys are on the professional responsibility, I think you are as well. That I
Mhm.
may just start a separate email discussion to
Yeah.
like throw ideas out there for topics that maybe I haven't come up with.
So
Yeah.
just
But then, oh, that's true.
don't put questions in emails. That's the only thing we ask, because
Okay.
it's not secure.
Okay, I'm just trying to come up with topics that
Yeah,
maybe I'm
you
not
can-
thinking of, that somebody would say, hey, you know, have you
Yeah.
considered this for writing a question?
I mean, you can do a call, you can do a Zoom, you can jump on Teams, but try not to put questions.
Or do it in the,
Load it up in the thing,
have
Yeah.
a, you know, a
Like a-
document in the
yes.
share file.
Where you can go
like
back
a
and forth.
work in
Yeah.
progress one.
Yeah.
like, put the title it work in progress.
Yeah.
and Shoot an email, hey, did you look at this? And
Yeah.
I'm totally.
Yeah,
down
do
for
that.
brainstorming.
Just keep the questions secure. That's
I think we
really
should
important.
read each other's, even if it's after the fact, just to make sure we're not duplicating. 'Cause some of the questions could be the same.
That's what you said with
Yes.
the st-
Yeah.
stats, that we all have like, there's like 6 of
Same.
them that have the same stuff.
We just need to, yeah, we'll put some real energy on that. After this meeting, and then hopefully we can get them to Jamie.
Yeah, another thing is, we have that report from them where they analyze the performance of all the questions. So we know which ones performed well, and we can select some of those to fill in the blanks where we can't get enough questions this round. We can reuse those questions that are good
Do we have
performers.
access to that bank so that we could like use those to maybe also come
We
up
do,
with
they're-
ideas?
They're on the report that's in your, that I'm about to go over next, that's
Okay.
in your meeting
Right,
materials
right.
at the bottom of it. She has
Okay.
all the questions that are, well, good performers in there.
And bad ones too. I think,
The
right?
STEM and the answer, yeah, and the bad
And
ones.
what is the sweet spot? Because I see that some of them are highlighted because too many people got them right or too many people got them wrong. Where do you?
Sweet
want it to
spot
be?
somewhere in the middle, right?
Is it like
I don't-
80%? Is it? 90%?
Did she say that in here?
I don't know.
She
that
has a
she's-
slide, one of those slides with the people that she.
On the question
Yes,
writing thing, yeah.
but I don't remember.
Like, there's a p-value with a 0.51 that she thinks is fine, but then 0.37 is bad.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But then if you scroll down, you can see that some might have very similar
Right.
stats, but they're not highlighted or.
I think it's dependent on the topic too,
Okay.
because some are harder than the others. And she has a chart that shows which ones are, obviously stats is the hardest and the rest of them, people are performing pretty equally on. But
Oh, I
just
see.
to remind
She's
y'all, the
got
pass
easy.
rate, I was gonna go over all this. When we look at this report, we can just do it now, but the pass rate for the general forensic exam is 98%. The pass rate for the technician's 93. And then the add-on exam that we were concerned about, the pass rate is, which is just the two topics for people going from technician to full analyst is 94%. So it's,
It's not that far off.
so thankfully, we haven't been that unfair in administering that test separately, but they've given us some options to consider how we might go forward instead of offering those three
Do
different.
you want to
tests.
jump into that, what we was gonna present?
Sure.
Okay.
Remind me what the objective is. Are we trying to write a whole new exam or just replace the questions that
Well-
we think are less than perfect?
Yes.
We're doing it. So we're doing it, we already went through a process where questions were rejected for the first exam
Right, I remember that.
that got done, and then we've been piloting questions. We have a lot of data on the piloted
Yes,
questions.
yes.
So we know which ones of those perform well and which didn't, based on the psychometrician's analysis. And then now what we're trying to do is write a whole new exam, which will include some of the well-performing questions from the last exam, but the majority of the questions will be new, because we want to keep the material fresh, right? And so we've introduced new material too. I mean, that's the other thing. So we're testing on that. But the questions that we have, that we asked them to focus on in this particular report is more around, we had an issue where we have technicians who take the technician exam, we have analysts who take the analyst exam. But then we have technicians who originally take the technician exam and then they upgrade to analysts. And what we had offered was that the domains that were not part of the technician exam would be the only ones they'd have to worry about, on the theory that it's actually beneficial to the examinee to not have to redo the whole thing. But then when you look at the fact that the cut rate is 70, and the domains that they didn't have to take the first time are some of the trickier domains, especially stats. The question was raised, well, is it really fair? Because it's like a sheer numeric answer, they have to get more right as an upgrader as a promoter in stats than they would if they had just done the whole thing again. So we put that question in front of the psychometricians and they came back with an option, and they analyzed the pass rates for each of those groups, right? The original analysts, the original technicians, and then the promoters, for lack of a better way to say it, and they're all within the same range, like
Yeah,
98, 94, 90.
the conclusion was that
93,
we
94.
have not been so unfair, but we should still take into
Re-
consideration that we're
Yeah.
using that compensatory model that they described to us last time, where if we're giving more questions, the student has an opportunity to compensate in another area if we're not doing. So the second question we asked them was whether we should establish a domain level cutoff score, and they gave us answers on that and an analysis of all the current questions that we have in that report that's in your materials. And let's see. Let me put it down here because I summarized just the solutions that they gave us. Because they proposed three different options. Okay, I think these are it.
What? If
There it
somebody
is.
took the add-on and failed,
Mhm.
could they then opt to take the full exam, or would they be kind of stuck in?
We had to say yes to that because we felt like it was unfair. So we did in
Okay.
that scenario. That's actually how the issue came up. The
Uh-huh.
candidate wanted to take the full exam instead.
Yeah.
Because they'd have a better chance they had failed the technician's exam 2 times. And
Well,
then
the
I'm
add-on,
sorry,
the
the
add-on,
add-on
yeah.
exam. Yeah.
and they were fearful that they'd fail it the third time. So
Right.
they said, well, let me redo the whole thing, because then I've got this compensatory aspect.
Did that help
Yeah, it passed. Well, I don't know that it helped them per
Right.
se. They did better. or
Okay.
whatever
They passed
reason.
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the 3 options that they gave us as an answer to our question about establishing domain level cutoffs. The general answer to that is that we're going to see a big drop in our pass rate if we do that. So they said that's probably not a viable option basically in the report. But they gave us 3 different options. The first one is to discontinue the add-on exam altogether. You got to take the technician's exam or the general forensic analyst licensing exam that has 110 questions, only 100 scored, and keep the 70% cut rate. That's option 1. Option 2, you can keep all 3 tests, maintain the 70% cut rate for each of them. And this is probably one of the most viable solutions if we want to make sure that people understand the different domains to a certain level. And in this scenario, we can establish separate minimum thresholds per domain, but we have to spend some time evaluating the data for each domain to determine the percentage pass rate should be lower for stats, for example. We have to evaluate what's a fair cutoff for each based on how folks performed in each of those domains. So we would need to spend some time if we did that option, but I do think that's probably one of the better options that she proposes here. If we feel like we really do need, we really are concerned that they at least get 4 stats questions right.
Right.
And then the third one here would be passing score requirements in each content domain, which was what our main question was. And she says that what we would have to do in that, it would be a huge undertaking because we would need standard setting studies for each. And so essentially you're making a different test for each topic at that point. And I think we decided not to go that far in the beginning. We thought about separating the topics, but yeah. So I think that 2 is probably, if we want to, ensure that they at least get 3 questions right in stats. We could probably just look at the data. We have some really good data and figure out what we think is acceptable.
For each domain,
Mhm.
so like. So
It
it
might
might
not
be,
be 70% in a
it
certain.
wouldn't.
Yeah, it wouldn't
Yeah,
be
it
like
wouldn't be
30 or 40.
It wouldn't be
Apparently, it
depending
can't
on-
even be 60 with the current questions that we have, because
Yeah.
then you wouldn't have a pass rate
That's
that's
true.
acceptable.
They would be low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's saying if we go as far as to say it has to be 70 across the board,
Right.
there's that, you're removing the compensatory model and I could see, I think the pass rate will be in big trouble.
Yeah,
It looks like it'd be 43.5%.
Yeah.
Right, that's right. I mean, so that's quite a dip.
Yeah.
But we can say you have to hit a minimum of 4 in statistics, 6 in evidence handling, for the love of Pete, and, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like the
Right.
stuff that we feel like, come on, people. Like you really need to be able to get these core concepts. We can go higher. Probably as far as 70, but not 70 across the board.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine her saying we would go higher than 70 because 70 is the overall. So somewhere between 30 and 70, I would think, for each.
I mean, even the technician exam, looking at the little chart here that has the 50% domain level threshold pass rate. The technician exam with 50% is only like 85% of people are passing, which is, I mean, I don't know, that seems okay, but it's a
Yeah.
little low. It's lower than the other, than the
It's not in
regular
the
exam,
90s, yeah.
right?
Which, can you just tell me which chart you're looking at
It's
right
on page 29
it's
of the.
29.
Oh, I'm looking
Board
at page
book.
5.
Well,
Page
I'm-
5.
The
Oh.
whole board book.
Gotcha, okay, I'm not looking at
Oh,
that.
I see. So 50%.
I don't think we can.
So if we had an
50%.
even across.
We
the
can't,
board.
we can't go
That's
60%.
really curious.
It's shocking.
That's really curious that it, just from 50 to 60,
Yeah.
it takes that big of a dive.
Yeah.
So I think we're looking at 50,
Maybe even 40.
50
Maybe.
or 40, maybe 40 in stats. But 50 in all the
How
others.
many stats questions were there? I can't remember.
There's 14 or 15, I think, because 15 is the max, and it does have, stats had one of the most, one of the domains with the most questions. Because they're easy to write.
I did not find that.
Aaron said that.
Well, the way I approach it this time, I'm like, look, if somebody can't add some numbers, then they shouldn't be in this field. So the first round, we said, okay, we're not gonna make anybody do math. I'm like, okay, they're gonna have to do some simple math. I mean, this is a stats
Mhm.
question. They need to do
Well,
some
you
math.
know, I mean, David Kay wrote this. David Kay and Cliff Spiegelman wrote the first set of
Mm.
questions for us.
Mhm.
Cliff will be writing them right now, but he passed
Right.
away, so we lost Cliff, and I just didn't have the heart to ask David to do it again. Plus, he's just slammed with everything else, and he's supposed to be retired, so we had the benefit of them really, helping us out with that stuff in the first go around. I don't have an objection to them doing simple math,
Right.
but it is true that we didn't ask them to do simple math. We didn't ask them to do any math.
No, they didn't have to do anything.
But
And
they are
ACS might
granted
have an
scratch
opinion about
paper,
it.
they have the
They do
time.
have scratch
mean,
paper, yeah.
The examples that I came up with were specifically ones where they didn't have to do like complex math.
Right.
Because they're not allowed calculators, they're not allowed, that. But if you're gonna be a scientist, you at least need to be able to apply the basic concepts, so.
I trust that you know what you're talking about.
That's my opinion, I should say.
Okay, well, we'll see how we do with those.
So under the
okay.
idea of having different pass rates for the different domains, if someone takes the add-on exam, then those pass rates would be applied to those sections as well.
Yes,
Right.
the minimum pass,
Mhm.
right. And at that point, I guess they can choose whether they want to do the add-on or not, but I mean, maybe we should provide some information that says like,
I think up front, just say, look,
yeah, like
you
here
have
are
to
your
pass this
options.
and-
If you feel comfortable and you want to go ahead with just the add-on, go for it. If you prefer, you may take the full thing again.
And I think offering, I'm assuming they still have 3 chances with that, with the promotion to take the exam.
I think so.
Because, yeah, so as long as they, like, if they choose one and they don't do well and they want to switch and
They
do
can
the other
switch.
one,
We let them
I
switch.
think
yeah.
that's fine.
I mean, when this person, this came up in the context of a couple and like real humans.
Right.
That were, that were
Animals,
struggling
real
with it.
Yeah.
And so we had to,
Animals.
and I was just like, wait a minute, we need to pause for a second and think about this because I think we thought we were doing people a favor in a sense.
And some people might feel that way.
Right,
And
some people might be like,
not.
thank you for not making me do that
Yeah.
whole thing over again, but for other people, yeah.
Yeah. So I think just keeping both options and allowing them to switch. And like you said, being upfront about what their risks are with each
Mhm.
one,
Yeah,
I think it's fine. They can make their
and then they
decision.
can make their choice.
Yeah.
Is
But
everybody
If you
cool?
make individual passing scores for each of the domains, you essentially are giving them 7 mini tests. So there's no disadvantage anymore to taking the upgrade exam, because you still have to get, say, 50% of the stats correct, whether or not you take the whole exam or you take the.
But there's still a 70%
Overall.
pass rate overall.
That wouldn't
for-
change.
That would
Right.
not change,
Not
yeah.
So they
But
have,
you're
so they
right,
have
they
less
can
to
compensate.
compensate. Yeah, they have to make a
You can,
decision.
there's still some compensation that can happen,
Just not
but
so
we're,
much.
we're controlling how much can
Mhm.
Yeah.
happen, basically.
I agree with
Um,
letting them have the option.
because I feel like not everybody would be bothered by the relative reduction in compensation possibility,
Right.
because they would just,
Well, and they're studying, but they only have to study the two
Right.
domains rather than all.
whereas some
So-
people might feel overwhelmed by the idea of having to go back and do it all again, you know, or they might prefer, like, let me just zone in on this stuff and then. I mean, most people pass it on the
Yeah,
first
it has
try,
it had a
so,
good pass
yeah,
rate,
I mean,
so.
But either way, it'll get a little bit harder, even if
Yeah.
it's just a couple percentage.
Yeah.
Should we
Mm.
vote on?
Yeah, I
forward
think
with
we
that,
should,
or-
Erin. I really think we need to take a vote on how best to proceed based on what they're recommending.
Okay, and this is in regards to setting the pass
Yeah.
rates?
I don't think you need to come up with what they are. I think we need
Okay.
to work on that with Jamie, but the
Okay.
idea is that that's the method we're gonna proceed with.
Okay, can I get a motion? In regard to, I guess we still need to say which type
Yeah, so of
there's
the three options
of the
that
three
Lee,
options.
that Lee presented, I think the
It'd be
one we're
option
talking about
2.
is 2.
It's the method for establishing cut scores by domain with an overall 70% pass rate.
Or cutoff.
I don't understand how that solves the problem of the add-on exam. Because if they still have to get 70% of the add-on exam correct, that's where they are right now.
Right, but what we're saying is that the complaint about the fairness had to do with the fact that someone could fail statistics completely, get 0 right in the analyst exam and still pass, but that is impossible to do in the add-on exam, right? So the discrepancy between the analyst exam and the add-on exam was extreme, one might say, right?
Right.
Because there's fewer questions, so if you miss one, it's.
Right, right. And
Mhm.
here what we're saying is that can't happen anymore. You have to have minimums in the analyst exam per domain. So nobody can get out with completely zeroing out on stats. And the examiner has a choice, and we're going to be clear about what that is, which is you can take the whole analyst exam and here are all the things you have to satisfy. Or you can take the add-on and you have to get a 70% overall with a minimum. And that means that if you do extremely well in one, as long as you get 3 right in stats,
Mhm.
So yeah, I think,
you're okay.
Kelly, were you asking?
I was looking at the other
add-on
direction. I thought we were
test.
making the add-on exam, taking away the add-on exam penalty for having fewer questions, but that's not the case. We're actually making the
The
general
perc-
exam more stringent.
Yeah.
Correct.
So there should be potentially fewer passing rates on the.
But we're looking at the
Potentially.
data and it's showing that it shouldn't,
If we
decrease by much.
target it correctly, you know, not overshoot it. It shouldn't change too much, but it does require somebody to at least have a minimum threshold in each domain.
Which I think is what we should do,
Yeah. I
right?
agree.
I mean, we're saying all these things are important.
Yeah.
They should have to pass all, or
I
not,
mean, we were
not
gonna do
pass.
that in the beginning, like when
Yes.
we first created the thing, we were planning to do that, but initially it was perceived as just a lot.
Sure.
I mean, people were already like, we're taking a what, a test? I mean, we've never had to do this. Nobody else in the whole country has to do it. Why do we have to do it? I mean, not that anyone said that out loud to our faces, but I'm sure they were thinking it or saying it to each other.
I have a question that I think is to Kelly's point. So if we're still gonna keep the 2 component test, are the cut levels for those 2 gonna be different? Because they have to equal 70, whereas we
No,
got 7
they're not.
domains,
They're not gonna be different. They can't be different.
They don't have to equal 70.
so that it won't be 70% pass rate for that test.
You can
Yes, it
still
will
have,
be.
you can still have an overall 70% pass rate and then have to pass each one with 50 and one with 40 or
I mean,
whatever.
what we're doing is, like Kelly's pointing out, it's more going to the fairness question by making it more rigorous for the full analyst exam rather than making it less rigorous for the add-on.
So you could still have a 70% cut rate, even if you only have to get 5 right and 3 right.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you're gonna have to get, if
I
you
see.
only get 3 right here, you're gonna have to get way
8
more
right
right on
there.
the other one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily help by making the add-on exam easier. It
Mhm.
helps.
Because they could meet the criteria that would have passed if they had taken it on the general exam, but it may not meet the 70%. Is that okay? Is that what we're after?
Well,
So
we would
there's
have
still
to
a
go
tiny
back
bit
and
of it?
analyze their first exam to see whether they would have passed the whole thing overall. I mean, I guess that's one way we could ask them if we could do that.
Mhm.
I mean, the other option is to add, so like looking at the number of questions on the technician exam, most of them are only 9, whereas on the analyst exam, they're taking 14 or 15 questions. So you could add 5 questions for each other of the other domains, so that they have to answer all of the questions total. I mean, that's
it would be-
really complicated.
It would be interesting if they could, if you could basically fold it into their previous exam.
Score.
Yeah.
Like, look at the scores.
Oh,
You know,
okay,
you kept all the results from their
Yeah.
technician exam.
Yeah.
You fold that one in
Yeah.
and then grade it as
Yeah,
a.
can
as
you
a-
ask her?
I like
to
that
do
idea.
that?
I
Yeah,
like
ask her
that.
to do that.
I think they're
Then-
probably gonna say no, because it's
Probably.
two different tests.
I'm not sure they
But they're
would
two
say
different, but
no.
they're,
I'm
they're
not
two
sure they
different
will.
data sets. I
Yeah.
mean, you've got one set of data sets from these
Yeah.
domains,
Mhm.
you've got these, and they comprehend, they get comprehensive full.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it would work.
I actually think they might be okay with it because it's, you have, and that sort of, then the add-on examinee can still make the choice, like, am I cool with what I had?
Right.
But do they
Or
have
do I
another,
want to do it over?
do they have
No.
another score? They can
I
ask
just know
for it.
that.
Oh, you can ask for it.
Can you?
Oh, yeah. you just
I never
don't
wanted
know.
to know.
You just don't.
I know, we should check
Yeah.
You do know how many you got wrong in each domain.
They tell you.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Yes,
Okay.
you can ask for that.
Okay.
You don't get it in
You
the
can
letter.
ask for how many you got wrong. You can't ask for which ones you
Oh,
got wrong,
okay,
but you
okay.
can ask for how many. And the idea being that people can focus their energies in the
Gotcha,
places where they're
gotcha.
weakest.
They tell you what sections you're weak in, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
so, yeah, I mean, you don't get it. I don't know if Rodney generates that automatically. I feel like for people who fail, he does, but for people.
They have to request the breakdown.
But I'm sure it's automatically generated and it's just sitting there. I mean.
Well, I mean,
Right?
it's there. I mean, it's
We
there.
have the data.
Yeah, we
we
have
can easily-
So I do think there is some value to going back and asking them, can we look at how many they got in each domain when they took the technician, count those up, and then allow that to go to the question of the overall 70.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Let's ask.
Okay.
Do we still need to make a motion though on the
Yes.
creation of the cut rates?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Wait, I have a question.
Okay,
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
So will this be to the current test or the test that we're writing? Like this
New
change,
test.
will it apply,
The new one,
the new one?
right?
Yes, only the new tests, not to the current one.
And then, but at some point,
Unless we want to pilot the current one again.
I
We
guess,
have to pilot-
why
would
wouldn't-
it ever apply to, like, at some point, the pilot is gonna be
Right.
the test,
Yeah.
right? So,
But why wouldn't, is she saying that we can't do it for this one? Like, why can't we do it for this one? I guess that's the question.
Well, we have it done by the time we're done with the rest of the one.
Well, I mean, we can make this shift tomorrow if they say it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we can say tomorrow, this is,
I
we can
think,
publish the rule. that
yeah, I
says-
think to be fair, we would give people time.
Yeah. of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
Before it is actually starts.
But you have data that backs up the
Yes.
cut rates that you
Yes.
are going to
On the
require,
cr-
and so it makes more
on the
sense
cr-
to put it on
it
this
does,
one than it
actually.
does. the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
test.
Yeah, because the data is going to change possibly for the questions
Yeah.
we're writing.
Absolutely right. It
Mhm.
will.
So I don't see why we can't. do it with some lead time though.
Mhm.
How far in advance do people usually study, would you guys say? 30 days?
At a minimum, I would say
You
generally.
think it's a minimum, really?
Yeah.
Was
I
that-
had some people that went crazy, like, in terms of like, they were prepared.
I was one of
Really?
those.
Yeah.
Really?
I made a full-on study guide for
Wow.
myself where I went in
Yeah.
and typed everything out and then studied it for a couple of weeks. So I spent probably 3 months on it.
Wow.
Really? Okay.
Mhm.
So then we should give them 3 months notice, probably.
That seems fair.
Yeah.
At
Because
least
even if they were
maybe
already
120
studying, they may
days.
have to go back and study more,
Right.
Mhm.
but not.
But if we do that, if we give them that much leeway, then we'll probably be on our next exam by the time.
Well, but we were gonna pilot this one with the volunteer license.
but they're- Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
That's true, but.
So
but
then
they
we have
get-
to get all we'd have to get all the same
That's true.
stats back
Yeah,
to make
that's
sure
true.
it falls in
Right,
line.
right. That
with
the
our
three,
cut
that if we
rates.
pick
Right.
3 or 4, that it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, I think this should be applied to our current,
Yeah,
but yeah, give them a little bit of,
90 days.
Yeah.
Announcement to tackle it. From
Yeah.
now on, we're doing it this way.
yeah.
I don't know that we need to have an admin rule, because we can score it how. we
Yeah, I
want
don't think
score
there
it,
would
but I think
need to be a
we-
change unless we want to specify it. We don't specify it.
No, because then every time we change something from 3 to 4, we'd have to write a new
Mhm.
rule. So I would say we just need to announce it broadly, like February, March, April, like starting May 1 or whatever we're gonna do. Everyone who takes the exam has to get these minimums. The cut rate's still 70. If you're taking the add-on exam, then assuming they let us do it, here are your options.
Mhm.
Now, thankfully, like, there's not very many, I mean, it was a handful of people who do the add-on, really.
Yeah.
I would say maybe a couple people from each lab. Most people like go with one.
My
and they go with
text,
the full analyst.
yeah, my
and they
text took the
just-
full analyst
Yeah,
exam
they're
just in
just like-
case. So they just have to deal
Especially
with it.
people who know that they're gonna be likely promoting, or they come in with the intention of.
Right.
So. All right, so, but I do think you should, then I think we definitely, thanks for the question, Emily. All right, you were saying, Mr. Reed?
So I would, I think that, we need a motion on that, of whether to accept that additional cut rate threshold. Like I said, Lee had recommended number 2. So is there a motion to accept?
I'll motion to accept.
Okay, Sandy motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, Donna seconds. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Since we're still on this one, is there any update on the training materials?
Yes, so I did want to update you all. That's the other piece I had here. So we are close to distributing the study materials, sans the 3 videos that we're missing. But we're working on those videos and we want to get with Sam Houston State University to develop them. Aaron's already given us a nice script for the evidence handling one. So we just need to get on developing the videos for those. But what's going to be in those videos is already in the written materials. So we think we can go ahead and send out the study materials. And so in
yeah.
anticipation of that, I contacted Jack Flanders, who's the president of the Texas division of the IAI, and he's going to help me blast all the members on, which are law enforcement agencies and get working, the crime laboratory section of the law
I'm
enforcement.
a
agency.
little nervous about what's gonna come back from that.
Yeah,
Like, I feel like we're gonna get flooded.
I do think it's going to be a lot of people that want to take it. Maybe we could cap it too, at like 150 or something
Yeah.
like that. But having 100
Would be
people
great,
would be really
yeah.
good data to have. So if we could get like even just 100, if we could cap it at 150.
I mean, I feel like all the anthropologists are gonna do it, for
Mhm.
sure, for sure. I mean, not that there's like scores of them or anything, there's maybe 12. What do you think, Mike? And then
The big groups would be like the latent print.
the latent.
Well, do you think
analysts.
this is gonna be difficult though, in terms of numbers? We probably need to do it sooner if y'all have that whole amount of people that are gonna be renewing coming up at the end of the year. You don't want those combining at the same time.
And
That was my thought.
I think you're probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll, yeah, we're gonna get that stuff out to Jack. And look, I mean, if we have to do them in like,
Waves.
yeah, we just say we'll take the first 50.
And the
And
one
then we'll
thing that we can keep pushing back the pilot date too, if we don't feel like everybody's ready to launch.
Now, the videos themselves are designed more to be a study tool. In other words, here's somebody telling you what's in the reading materials rather than being a source from which we draw questions, if that makes sense.
Right, just for different learning
Yeah.
styles.
So. Yeah, we'll let you guys know what kind of response, but just Jack's response was very.
They all want to be
enthusiastic,
licensed. They
so
do want to be licensed.
They really do.
So
I think the
think
problem
mine's right.
came from, I'll speak on personal experience.
Mhm.
The problem came, I think, whenever we were all told at one point, hey, okay, forensic science is gonna have to be licensed from now on, and everybody was like, oh, that's steep, oh, really, you gotta do this, and then they're like, oh, no, not latent science, and we were like, wait.
What?
Wait, why?
Why don't I
A lot
get
of
to
people
complain
believe-
too? I want to complain.
So, you know, that's the only because they couldn't. They
Yeah,
wanted to,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
human nature, you know, and then I teach a lot of classes and, you know, a lot of them are latent examiners. And I really do promote the whole testing thing, you know, tell them what it is. And I guarantee in every one of the classes I've taught, about half of them in there are like, yeah, I'm gonna do that
Mhm.
whenever the voluntary, blah, blah, blah. You know, so, I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, there are a good deal of latent
Mhm.
folks.
Yeah,
I don't know about the crime scene folks so much.
I think there's probably a lot of crime scene folks too, because we've expanded the realm of
Yeah.
folks that can do it. Anybody that works in the crime scene section,
yeah,
basically.
and I mean, I
Because we
know,
couldn't carve out crime scene reconstructionists.
Yeah.
There was just no
Yeah.
way to do it easily.
yeah,
And they want to be licensed.
right.
Their peers are licensed. They work in the same.
Like, I'm just thinking about just alone, just DPS latents and HFSC crime scene,
Yeah.
just those two groups. How many latent crime examiners?
We have 2, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Right, I guess that's good.
Yeah.
And
We
how
have-
many crime scene people do you have? Because I know Peter's gonna make them all. do.
Yeah,
But it's not APIS.
I don't know.
30.
30.
Is that all 13 labs? Yes, 'cause we only have 4 friction wrench labs. Right. And then we have APIS and all.
So I have to imagine that DPS is gonna encourage them all to do it, right? And so that's 30 just, yeah, them.
I mean, of course, not everybody's necessarily gonna take the pilot, right? They may
Right.
wait.
Right.
So I know some of our friction ridge examiners took the pilot test prior to.
Yeah, so
So
they,
they won't have to test again
No.
because they already took the pilot.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that same question.
if you took it and you passed, you're good
Yes.
for the rest of your life. It's like lifetime pass. Yes. You never have to retake.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of them.
All you
so
gotta
they-
do is the rest of the jazz, but, you know, all together. Yeah,
And then when on more to that, actually, because I was curious about this myself. So let's say I took it, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm up for my renewal, but I don't have a license, right, because I'm waiting for that. So, so the renewal, so let's say we get this ready and we can actually give the voluntary license and all the people who took the pilot are like, okay, but it's been like 3 years, so renewals passed, we didn't do anything for that 2-year intermediate.
renewal?
So for current
Yeah,
licensees,
yeah.
in 2 years, they have to provide all of it, you know, this is.
Oh, yeah, no, you start from the beginning.
Okay, so.
It's just that if, like, we have 5 things, I mean, Rodney could tell better, that you've got to do to get through that application. And normally one of the steps would be take and pass the exam, and you just get to skip that.
Okay, so it's like starting from scratch.
So then you get your license, and then you start your first 2-year CE cycle.
Gotcha.
And then from there, you go on, from then till whenever. So you won't have to like make up CE from when, you know, the period from when you took the test to now, or
Like
show that
5
you did
years,
it, because you weren't on notice that you needed to, so,
Right.
yeah.
Anything else on 5? Everybody good to keep going? You might need to take a small break.
I think that was a comment. Is there
Now, there's
camera?
something in
Is
the
there a
chat.
chat?
No, it's me and Steve.
Oh, okay.
chatting
I was like. I
About the
thought
meeting
something-
tomorrow, and I guess, I don't even know how it's coming up over there, but it is.
I just saw something called.
I just said, I'm blasting this on the screen, can you please email me instead?
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
He was just
So
asking
she
about the
said-
technology for tomorrow, and I was trying to help him.
She said STOP, and that's why it stopped.
Oh, the owl
No, I
is
clicked the
listening.
wrong button.
Oh, I clicked the wrong button. Okay.
Stop.
I thought maybe
It's
it
so
was the
funny.
command, like Alexa.
Oh, no, that'd be cool though.
That's better than like, it's personal text messages coming up whenever you're sharing your whole screen.
Uh-huh.
How do I turn that off? That's happened to me once before.
Okay, so.
So nothing more on 5. Go ahead and move on to 6 unless anybody absolutely has to have a break. You're always welcome to step out if you need. I guess this kind of just flows in because we're already talking about the voluntary licensure. But I guess it's in specific in regard to forensic anthropologists.
And document examiners.
Okay,
We just decided to draft a rule with what we came up with from, we had a telephone conference with the forensic anthropologists where we decided to mirror basically what the SWIG-ANT education and training guidelines say, because we don't have any OSAC guidelines yet. Once we do have OSAC guidelines, I've built that in here. We may need to change the language a little bit, Lynn, but basically what I say is you have to comply with the education requirements that are established in the SWIG-ANT document or the OSAC registry document on training, which is, it is in the pipeline actually, but I don't know. Sometimes that can take 2 years, sometimes it can take 1.
So, yeah, I need to.
We probably need to
go
find
through
out.
This rule a little more in depth, but I thought one of the things that we talked to the Anthro group about was requiring certification as a minimum threshold for the reason that they're developing education requirements right now, and we can link so there's this big debate in the community about whether you have to have a PhD. This is the only discipline where we have that issue, where there's like where the line is not bachelor's degree, like we're talking PhD versus master's. And they have not resolved this issue. Like there was even a fair amount of tension on the call that we did around the issue. And I'm not sure that our commission really needs to make that decision. If people get certified under their own certification program, I feel like if we put that as a threshold, we'll be okay because they will settle on what the right answer is, I think, for them. So that was sort of, we wanted to bring them in because they really can do it easily. They have a ton of formal education. They've been asking about it for eons. So why not bring them in? They're a small group. I don't know, Mike, you have anthropologists. Is there anything that you have heard from them about any of this licensing business?
No, not rather had any formal conversations.
Just that they want to do it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I think if you all approve us moving forward with the rulemaking, then we'll start it. We'll give them a chance to apply. And then the second one is a no-brainer too, which is, you have the document examiners one in here, Lee?
It's in here.
So it's the document people too, remembering that they were in the fold and then we took them out of the fold because there were no defense experts accredited.
Yeah, the difference
And that's a
between,
constitutional issue. Remember
the
we went
only
through all that,
difference
Bill?
between, I
Are we
copied
talking,
over the.
I apologize, are the people with the problem, are we talking about the Rangers?
No, that's a whole different.
Okay,
subject.
all right. because-
That's a whole different.
We will talk about it when we get to crime,
That's
the
a
crime
whole
scene
different
license.
deal. All right, so setting the Rangers aside for a moment, you remember when? So, I forget who, oh, it was, Bill's predecessor, Keith Hampton brought this to our attention, which is there were no document examiners on our list of accredited shops that did defense work, none. DPS would do it in theory if they weren't conflicted out on a case, but that's it. Like, but chances are they're gonna be conflicted out in a lot of cases because the state already would have gone to them. So the issue that was raised, and I think actually TCDLA got involved as well, is they said the law is, so, 38.35, the Code of Criminal Procedure says it's inadmissible unless it's from an accredited lab, but as defense lawyers, how are we supposed to comply with that if there are none available? And so we took the accreditation requirement away because it's a fundamental constitutional issue, really, due process issue.
Completely.
And so even though nobody really felt all that great about sort of lowering the standard in a sense, but if there's nobody available, and we called every state to say, like, would everybody that was accredited on ANAB's list, we called them all and said, would you do defense work in Texas? And they all said, we can't because we, the city pays our bill, the city pays and we're a PD and we can't do it, or we're a state lab and we can't do it for another state defense. We don't do private, what is essentially, I guess, consulting work in a sense. So we ended up taking the accreditation requirement away. Well, the document examiners were already licensed, the ones,
There were like 3.
and there are only 3 of them, and they're all at DPS, but they were like, well, that stinks.
And even if they could do
Yeah.
it, they would be conflicted out because if there's only 3 of them. and they
So
all
what
work
we're
together.
doing now is reinstating a voluntary program for any document examiner, whether they are accredited or not. And so our friends at DPS, I'm sure, will reactivate their licenses right away, and then other people can do the license if they so choose. But we're being cognizant of that admissibility issue in 38.35, which is probably unconstitutional.
Right, and I've had a number of document examiners over the years, and most of them were prior to the commission's existence and the requirement for licensure. But the people I had, no offense to the science, I mean, it always seemed like voodoo to me, right? I mean, there was no real peer-reviewed research that they could point to or any kind of consistent protocols. And I know that there are still experts that will take your money and give you an opinion. And I mean, it would be great if we could invite all of them. Hey, you can become licensed and do this thing. I think the number of examinations that are done in litigation is probably small, just in my experience. And so I just don't see any of that. I don't see any defense experts have a group of those people ever being developed.
I think it probably depends on what they're doing. So I don't understand. Well, I think you're probably talking about the traditional, like
is
the
this
guy
his
signed
signature, right?
Is this his signature? And there's a lot of subjectivity in that sort of thing. I think it's fair to say that they struggle with that accusation, and also there've been some not so great press on like a cat applying for certification with their organization and being granted it. So yeah, they've had a rough go, but there are other things that they do nowadays.
So
Like,
they do have like paper reconstruction where they can be able to
Sure.
piece that together. They don't do ink analysis, the chemical processing of it, but they do have a spectrometer that actually could look to see at the ink. But I think the problem is like, and I don't have a forensic document background, I just support them now. But from how I understand it, like there's like the graphologists, the people that may not have the traditional training that our forensic document examiners do in the forensic setting that do take on casework and they do types of analysis. And they may not be the same trained, they might not have the same type of training as the traditional forensic document examiners and question documents. So I think there's a lot of conversations that go on as to who's willing to take on the work and what is their true expertise.
Because some of it's like I'm intuitively looking at these two signatures and seeing the loops and whatever.
Sure.
and it-
I mean,
and it
that's
just
less-
feels.
To me,
feels
that's
very
handwriting
subjective.
analysis.
Yeah.
Right,
not
right.
document
But document,
examination.
and I can see those particular applications having, much more scientific basis.
Mhm.
I guess my issue is if that becomes a critical part of a trial and I don't have my own testifying expert, I would at least want a consulting expert. And if I go to somebody who's willing to do that and they're going to help, they're going to give me questions against somebody who has a PhD and is fully licensed, has complied with these other things, I'm still at a horrible disadvantage because my guy got to give me good questions. I mean, it is my
Mhm.
kind of instinctive reaction to it.
Yeah, but our forensic document examiners, they still do a lot of handwriting comparisons
Do they?
too.
Okay.
So they do the paper reconstruction, but they also do a lot of the handwriting comparisons as well, the signatures and such, so. They still do that, and I think there is like a scientific basis for it, and there is a OSAC group that supports them as well.
Is there proficiency in that type of analysis?
Yes. So they have CTS proficiencies.
Well, I mean, we could debate the developmental validity of document examination, but that's probably better for a daughter hearing.
Yeah,
And
and I wasn't saying that. Rick. I guess what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
if I'm going to litigate one of those cases, I need somebody to educate
Right,
me and,
right.
and be able to point out some issues that I could bring up to a jury.
And the issue that Keith Hampton was raising is the way the statute read and the relatively few number of people who are trained to do this, the defense had nowhere to turn the way it was set up.
And
so
I don't think that's changed though,
So we changed the law, we changed the rule
right?
to take document examination off of the accreditation list, and that would eradicate or ameliorate, I don't know what the right, mitigate the problem that Keith was raising. But now what we're saying is like, we at least want to give them the option of seeking licensure. And that applies to anybody who wants to do it. So your expert, the state's expert, anyone can do it.
Sure.
They don't have to have met that accreditation.
Like I could go
threshold.
hire this guy and he'll testify. But he's still not going to be able to measure up to somebody. Well, I mean, they theoretically, they could,
You could.
It
right?
depends.
It's
I mean,
open to anybody,
Yes.
right?
It's open to
Right.
anybody, and they can
Yeah,
use it as a marketing
I-
tool. that looks,
And it's
you know,
voluntary, it's
Yeah.
not mandatory.
Well, the other thing is
I'm
there,
interested to see in the future
but like,
how many
No.
people, how many private people. are gonna do it.
microtrace does document, doesn't it?
No, I don't think they do handwriting. They might do some paper analysis, but I don't know if they do that.
I mean, there are definitely well-known defense experts on this stuff for sure. And but then there are some yahoos, so, you know.
And we have like retired people on DPS that do some defense work as well, so.
So why can't those people, they just weren't getting licensed? That's the issue?
Well, they weren't
They didn't-
accredited.
couldn't.
They didn't work
They
for an
didn't-
accredited
they didn't
laboratory,
work
so
for
they
an
couldn't,
accredited
they didn't
lab.
qualify.
Yes.
I gotcha.
And you're gonna recognize also like some people, I don't know, I mean, these people are retired, they're, I don't know how much longer they're gonna do it. Like, do they want to put the time into licensures? I don't know.
No, I get those folks all the
Yes.
time, the retired folks, like I'm about to call a former DPS retired analyst as an expert in a case, right? So that's very helpful, and that's where I get most of the people that are worthwhile.
Because they also know, they know the lab, they
Right.
know what's expected,
Exactly.
they know.
So the only people that
work for an accredited lab, work for DPS, or are there other agencies in Texas that support prosecution? Does that make
So
sense?
for, particularly with respect to document examination, the only document analysts in the entire state of Texas that were in an accredited lab were at Texas DPS in Austin, not even like sprinkled or like literally on Lamar off the road.
And
Like,
it's 3 examiners, like it's not a
Three
big
people.
section.
Right,
Yeah.
right, I was just trying to figure that out.
and so the
We had
problem,
them for a while, but he
Yeah.
retired a long time ago, so, I mean, long before TPS.
so the two separate questions, right, are 38.35 of the Code of Criminal Procedure and the admissibility. It used to be that document examination was one of the disciplines that you had to send to an accredited lab in order for it to be admissible in a criminal action. We have rulemaking authority to add disciplines or to remove disciplines. So we removed it after Keith pointed this issue out to us so that it would be more fair, essentially. But now what we're saying is, well, we're gonna make it optional to get a license at least for anyone who wants to do it, regardless of whether you do work at DPS or work in a private practice or whatever.
So you're taking the accreditation requirements away.
We already did that.
Licensure,
Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
That's
licensure
basically what we
requirement.
decided at the last meeting, and that's across all disciplines, not just document examiners. So any other
Right, any of the
discipline,
voluntary
like the forensic
ones.
anthropologists.
So I would think
Labor
that if
for-
it's not, if there's not a mandate that says thou shalt have X, Y, Z, then does that not address the?
The defense issue, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Except that there may,
Except
there
that
may not still
His expert's not
be-
gonna wanna get the voluntary
And
license.
so I guess that's the bigger point is, yes, we've removed the due process issue, right?
Mhm.
Where you don't have to be in this lab. Nobody has to be licensed, right? You can go testify all you want.
Mhm.
But you may not be good.
Well, and you might be good, but you're not gonna be able to compete with those other people, because the
Mhm.
people that are gonna have these credentials that y'all have outlined for the voluntary licensure, those people are gonna be working for the state.
Not
No?
necessarily. The only thing that they
I-
would have to do that's a pain in the butt is take the test. That's it.
Okay.
They're gonna have the rest of the.
Well, and the CE,
credentials.
right, which.
But if you
anybody
have
who's
those, how are you
legit
gonna
is
make a
have-
living in the private sector? I mean, is kind of what
How are
my
you gonna
question.
make a living? I'm confused.
So what you're saying is like the individuals that are competent for the defense exist. They just aren't working for accredited laboratories and that
Right.
prevented them from getting the license in the same way as DPS.
Yeah,
Is that
but
what you're saying?
Yeah.
So we still theoretically have access to competent
Yes,
document
yes,
analysis.
And you won't be excluded, they won't be excluded from testifying by virtue of the fact that they're not an accredited lab. That was what the problem was.
Right, right. And I think that problem's solved, but I think it still exists in terms of parity and fairness, if that's kind of part of what we're going for, in that question, if the requirements are you have to have a PhD? is
No,
it-
no, no, that's.
That's for the
That's for
anthropologists.
anthropologists.
No,
Okay.
no, that's the
Okay.
bone people.
Okay.
But there still are educational requirements. I don't
But they're
remember what they
like
were.
bachelor degree.
Yes,
Okay,
professional.
okay.
Yeah, no, Bill, no.
Okay, I thought it was some, because I was reading the,
Just,
No, we're not,
The-
no, you're looking at anthro.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
document exam doesn't even have to have a bachelor's here.
Right,
That's
document
Yeah.
exam
just
is the
staff.
least
Okay,
formal
all right,
education.
okay.
It's the people, the bone
High school
people have a
diploma.
lot of fancy degrees, is what we've come to find out.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at this, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well,
wow.
where did
right.
we land last time in regards to proficiency testing in the quality assurance program?
I think that's, PT testing is in.
It's
here
in
as
here,
well.
It is, so
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what they would still take a proficiency.
It's either,
test.
yeah, you
But
work
they
in an
just buy
accredited
those from,
lab setting or you
CPS, yeah.
demonstrate.
they should be doing that anyway, it's an
Yeah.
OSAC
But
standard.
CTS isn't, like, they don't grade them, they just like, they'll show if you're an outlier or something, they'll
Right.
box it, but they don't grade them, so they give it back to your agency to grade them, so if you're
Well, we're gonna look
independent.
at it.
So,
They give a pass fail though.
like, I don't know, like,
No.
you know,
No,
don't
that-
they?
not every- not
No,
every
they
PT
just
does.
show you what the consensus
Yes, yes, and
results
then you
are
go
and then what your
Right,
results
so
are.
they'll send it to us and we'll look at it and see if they fall outside of the consensus themselves, and then we have to look at why.
Okay.
Is it because of a flaw in the test, or is it because the person doesn't know what they're doing? Like, that's the same thing you would investigate when you get a bad, right? Yeah.
So then the commission would oversee that
We
part.
have to, yeah. Although doing that for Layton's feels very scary, actually, now that you bring that up.
What part?
For Friction Ridge, like looking at outlier proficiency tests.
Well, especially because they have multiple prints, and then you had one that, like this last time, I don't remember what the consensus was, but there was one that people tend to miss, and it's, what does that really mean? So there's a lot of questions around it.
It's, okay, so when they switched to trying to do things all digital, and there are some clarity issues with that particular image, when they tried to reproduce it, and that one is like an issue with the test, and I think, and, but they do all that, so with CTS with Layton's and 10 points, whatever, so Friction Ridge, there are, you have the expected results, and then they also go through and they do a consensus thing as well. So they do both. So I can have if I get one wrong, but 60% of the people who get this test get it wrong too, then that one's thrown out. So it does not.
Well, that's a
count against
problem
you
in
as a
and of
person.
itself,
Yeah,
in
yes.
my mind.
But it's like, but if it's 90%, like you like have to, there's like that whole, like, where do you say?
So I think
Well, I don't know. I don't know
we're
their
gonna have to
actual
figure that
layout.
all out. We're just gonna have to, I mean, if we have to hire somebody, I hire Glenn Langford.
I
to
think
look
you're
it
gonna,
up
for
or
each
something.
discipline, you're probably gonna have to hire people and say, is this okay?
Right.
That's okay, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but yeah, I mean, I definitely, I mean, there are bigger, deeper, harder questions about the way proficiency testing is done and graded in general, but those are not for today.
I agree.
But yeah, so, no, they don't need these fancy, no. it's a
That
col-
makes me
it's a-
feel better.
It's no, Bill, it's a miscommunication.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the anthro people. Because they really do, like, to be considered an anthropologist, you have to have done what they were telling us is pretty much PhD level work to really be considered an like nobody comes out of undergrad an anthropologist. Right, Mike?
Right.
Yeah.
Question on the anthropologist, you were talking about requiring certification. Is that weird because we don't require it for any other discipline?
We have complete statutory express authority to do that if we want to. So where it makes sense, we should do it.
Okay.
And where it makes the most sense in my mind is in these voluntary categories. We can do that. We haven't gotten to latent prints. So just remember that. I know you won't forget it. But yeah, that is definitely that's definitely one way to skin the cat.
That would make it easy.
Yeah.
Right,
That
right?
said, I'm pro, like, do good for yourself, make yourself better in whatever way. That said, I know many non-certified examiners who are excellent examiners.
But if they had would they just, well, then they
They
get
probably
to,
choose not to do the license.
well, then, when they get to court and they testify and the defense asks them, well, you're not certified? No. You're not licensed? No. Well, why not?
Yeah.
We've had that exact scenario come up, and because we have someone who led a certification last, because he's been in business 40 years and he doesn't really care to do it anymore, and he's gone to court and he's answered that question, but it hasn't been a problem. He just says, it's not a mandate. It doesn't take away from the fact that I do a good job, and we have a very strong quality program in our laboratory, and we're able to, blah, 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 right? And he testified very well and did a great job, and there was no problem with his results or anything.
Well, there you go.
So we're
I mean, I think
involving court.
that's up to him then, right? To-
Right, and so, I
Personal
mean, I know
choice.
that the question has come up with, if we are allowing certain folks to get licensed, but then there are others who aren't able to get licensed for whatever reason, how are they gonna hold it in court to the others? Well, I mean, it happens all the time, really. We deal with that all the time, because there are uncertified people. Same thing with licensure. There will be unlicensed people because it's voluntary. We're already doing it though, across the board. I mean, if it's a voluntary thing, as long as I have a good quality program in place, my results are checked, and that I feel like holds a lot of weight in court for us, or has thus far.
It'll be interesting to see, because the implications of a license, like the word license, feels very ground level. Whereas certification, like I can be board certified to do real estate law because that's my specialty, but I have to be licensed to be a lawyer. So it'll be, and that's what the parties in the legal system are used to terminology wise. That's our terminology, right? So of course, lawyers and judges, I imagine, will tend to project that a little bit out. So we'll see what they do.
How common is it for latent print labs to require certification?
A lot of your accredited laboratories will certify their latent sections if they have a latent section. But then, I mean, it's not.
We don't require it.
It depends, I mean, it really depends on the agency. I think a lot of them choose to do that because it's available and it's part of the lab, and therefore they make that choice to do it. But I mean, you have a lot of smaller agencies, agencies in Texas.
Because I think we did require it, and I think we dropped that requirement. I'm not sure. I don't remember, but
Why do, I will have to ask Peter, but
yeah,
I'm surprised.
yeah, I
But
think
you're
it was
still
just because
doing
they
it.
weren't getting qualified candidates that really wanted to come, or they,
that's
you know, they
sad.
were getting qualified candidates that just happened to not be certified. Maybe they
Oh,
hire them
I
as,
see,
yeah, like
Oh,
on
I thought you
certification.
said accreditation.
Oh, no,
No,
sorry.
it's
Certification.
like
certified.
Yeah.
Certification.
So, okay, answer's still kind of the same, it depends on the agencies, but there are a lot of agencies that require certification to hire. Like, we don't require certification, but, I mean, there are a lot that require, but it's up to the agency specifically. I mean,
I just didn't know how common it was, because if it's super common and they're all already certified, then
I don't
requiring
know,
it.
I don't know, but we could ask Jeff Landers, I bet you know.
I actually just never
Have we beaten 6 into the ground?
I don't
Is
think
it-
we
is it-
have,
is it
have
been
we?
Beaten into submission? Do we need
Well,
to
we
make
have
a?
to approve the launching of the anthro and document examination voluntary license programs. That's what we need.
Okay. Because, so I was confused because document examination, forensic anthropology are the only ones that have the course requirements here. But all of them are listed at some point in this document.
Because they are all eligible to take the test.
Okay,
We just haven't fleshed out their education
Okay.
and other requirements yet, because we're trying to do like 2 at a time. So
Okay.
we're gonna bring 2 at a time,
Okay.
to you, sort of, you know.
gotcha.
We hope
Like we
to,
started with
yeah.
the easiest ones, so
They
to
were already
speak,
done,
because they
Okay.
have strong frameworks, and then
Yeah, I think we want to engage the people from that community before we
Yeah.
make decisions about what the.
so we did
configuration-
engage with the anthro people, and the document examination people were already done.
Yeah.
So that was easy. So next time we'll do latent and crime scene,
Ooh, those are
That's
two big
two
ones.
big ones.
I want to do one at a time.
or maybe latent and who else we got on the list?
I mean, maybe we have to do all the IAI ones at once, you know.
What are the others?
Digital,
Digital.
Brett.
Maybe we'll do latent and digital next time.
I don't know, is digital?
Digital is a kind of a bear.
Yeah, I feel like they're all bears.
Mhm.
And we have crime scene reconstruction.
A lot of your crimes and folks do latent. Might blend very.
It might be better to do that and then leave digital. I mean, digital feels big.
And then breath testing is also.
There's a lot of private digital practitioners, I think.
Yeah,
I wonder what their quality systems are like,
Um,
whether they do proficiency testing. No,
Well, there are a lot of digital.
digital is such a broad term, right? 'Cause
it
that's-
really is.
I think one thing that we're gonna need to do though is define what types of activities we're talking about that would be covered, that we can license people to do.
I mean, they have all that in the OSAC.
Yeah, because digital, right here, we say computer forensics, audio or imaging, but cars are a big thing, and I don't know if that's included under computer, cell phones.
Forensic.
Yeah, cell phones for sure.
Okay, yeah. Because we're doing a lot of cars now.
I don't know about cars. I haven't thought about cars,
Yeah.
but I mean, I imagine. the
They're like
OSAC
infotainment systems. have a
Like our cars
lot-
know a lot about us.
Oh, yes.
So where does facial recognition fall? Is that
Ooh,
still?
probably
digital?
digital. I think it's digital.
I think it's
Is
digital.
it
That
digital?
puts it in digital, I think.
Wow.
Are there
Just kind of
people that do that at DPS? Isn't
We're
there?
just, I think we're just starting the
Just- yeah.
process. But there's, I mean, that's a comparison portion.
So can I I'll read you what the digital evidence thing in OSAC. The Digital Evidence Subcommittee focuses on standards and guidelines related to information of probative value that is stored or transmitted in binary form.
That is
Include
a
cards.
ton of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's just like.
That's everything.
Yeah.
No.
So I feel like that's what we're talking about. I don't know how we could do anything different. That's
We
everything.
defined it, we define it differently, I think, in the rules, don't we? Already have, or do we just say
I'm not
digital?
sure that we define it at
We
all.
say digital, including something, I think,
Yeah, right here, V, page 4.
including computer forensics. We
Audio.
don't limit it, you're right, Lynn.
Or imaging.
But we just say including specifically computer forensics, audio, or imaging.
Which is a lot, but
Mhm. That's pretty much as broad as that,
yeah,
No, I think we might even have to make it
broader.
broader.
Just emulate the OSAC wording probably.
yeah.
I think you look at their lollipops too, as to how they have it.
Lollipops?
For the digital, for the OSAC, how they have. the-
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Oh, they do have the,
'Cause they have digital
the different
evidence, yeah.
specialties.
They have digital evidence, facial identification, speaker recognition, video imaging technology and analysis.
I like that.
That goes into the lollipops.
Yeah, so the lollipop is this
Yes,
diagram, but OSAC diagram.
Wow.
yeah.
So digital multimedia is the big
Mm-hmm.
SAC, and then like what Sandy was reading, digital evidence, facial identification, speaker recognition, and video imaging technology and analysis. Yeah. So we could even make that, if we don't want to make it quite as vague
Mhm.
as their definition, we can just say,
And then, like you said, you'll reach out to that community, so they'll
Yeah.
have input on whether that's right or not.
but I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
It's the purple section of the lollipop.
Yes.
And we could do the same for the document examiners too. Think about what activities we're actually gonna license.
That's
Since
what
they
yeah, I
do
was
so many different
wondering,
things.
paper analysis, handwriting, do we need to
Yeah.
include those, or is it just clear from document examination?
I guess we
Just
could
know.
make it clear or leave it vague, but making it, if we want to exclude somebody though from being,
Yeah.
having a
Oh, yeah.
license, then we
Yeah.
would want to make it clear, you know.
Forensic document examination, it's just one of the,
Pattern section.
it's one of their pattern, physics and pattern.
Can you click on it and they have more, or
We can try.
it doesn't look like it's clickable?
Subcommittees. Yeah. Okay. The forensic document examination subcommittee focuses on standards and guidelines related to the forensic analysis, comparison, and evaluation of documents.
That's pretty darn broad.
That's like,
Where's our lollipop for this one?
it's green. The green one. So
Dry
scope of
seals.
expertise. But that's still in, well, it says scope of expertise in forensic document examination, but that standard hasn't been released yet. Let me see if any of these standards have like a definition.
And their members include a lot of private practices.
Oh, there's a ton of them. There's a ton of them. Yeah. I would say it's probably most of them.
So like if you look under discipline-specific bibliographies and
Mhm.
references, like altered documents, ink technology of various kinds, dry seal impressions,
Stamping impressions, you don't think about that.
right?
Stamping devices.
Film ribbons and typed text. Who uses serial killers? That's who uses typed text. Handwritten check writer.
Maybe
Yeah, I
a lot of counterfeit checks is a counterfeit.
Yeah, that's
you're
a
right.
big part of it, I think.
It looks like they have several standards, let's say several, 5 standards that have been sent to investigators. and
Yeah.
they're in Development, and they look like they would be
Relevant, right?
right.
Yeah.
More definitive.
Mhm.
I noticed that. So I'll get my hands on, or somebody. Sandra, are you still on the other side?
No, I'm not affiliated. But I could probably get stuff.
So I, in theory, should be able to get to it, and I find it very daunting, the whole, but they're just in ASB probably. They're probably pretty easy to get to. I shouldn't. Yeah, OSAC is like a whole nother job. All right, so are we okay then, proceeding with a rulemaking on the two voluntary categories, which will be anthro and the document?
Yes, I do believe so. We need a
I
motion.
think we need a motion.
We need a motion.
Those are the rules that are outlined here in the attachment.
So the motion would be to recommend to the full commission that we adopt a rule for voluntary licensure of document examiners and anthropologists to launch our voluntary licensing program.
Can we just say that we?
Yeah, you can just say make the motion.
What Lee just said.
Lee said. Does it address the educational requirement question for anthropologists that you brought up?
So we're basically gonna track what the SWIG does already.
And that's already in here. the way that's written.
So we just need somebody to move to, let's do one at a time. So forensic anthropology first, so that we move, it would be a motion to recommend to the full commission that we launch the forensic anthropologist voluntary license with the rulemaking. And then the same motion for document examiners.
Is there a motion?
I'll motion.
Deb motions to accept, or to make that motion, sorry, the real word. Is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that was on anthropology.
Mhm.
Now we need to do a second for question documents. Is there a motion?
I'll motion.
Sandy, it's a motion for accept question documents for voluntary licensing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, both motions carried.
Like nobody wants to motion.
That one was wordy.
I don't think as chair, I can make a motion. I think
No,
that's.
Yeah.
you can't. Well, you shouldn't. I mean,
Right.
it's not, it's like a Robert's rules thing, not a Texas law thing, but yeah, it's better that you don't.
Got it.
Now we've beaten six together.
Now six has been beaten to death. Okay. Is there anything on 7?
No, I don't think we have anything.
No, I mean, the OSAC stuff, DPS released their big announcement that they're adopting, that they're, got their OSAC seal of approval or whatever it is that you get, and mostly where we're gonna see a lot of this hit is when we start rolling out our online system.
I have a question about that, actually, thinking further into it. So what we're doing is creating a spreadsheet where we take every standard and break it down by like, 6.1, 6.1.1, whatever, because from what we talked about before, you'll have the option to accept in whole or accept in part or whatever. So is that how it's gonna be broke down on the website still? Okay, cool.
And ASTM gave us permission. We were a little bit concerned about copyright on the back end because so your authorized people from each lab will go in and you'll say like, okay, we comply with this OSAC standard except for provision 3.6. It doesn't apply to us, whatever. So we were a little bit concerned that reproducing the whole standard on the back end is a copyright thing, but they gave us permission to do it, so we're fine.
Is that just for ASTM standards or is it also?
We didn't
for-
need it for it.
Okay.
And since we don't have any dental standards, thank you. Hallelujah, we don't have to worry about the ADA, so.
Speaking of which, do you guys have, I know Peter sent out some spreadsheets that had the standards like wrote down at one point, but that was like a year ago plus.
there's a tracking in your QA, in your quality group for that. Eric or somebody's doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, for each standard, we like, there's some sort of document. I think Jackie's the one doing it, but like, they're tracking which ones we've adopted.
Who's
But-
staying for TACWID this afternoon? Would you mind making a note to ask Peter Stout if they can resend that to everybody, that checklist?
With the any updated.
If I forget, today, you just, I'll try to make a note to raise that issue again, because we had sent out what they were using internally.
Do you want me to message him right now?
And they
That'd be
don't-
great.
they don't-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Send them a note that asks whether they can resend it, right? Is that the question, like,
If they can
update it or?
send, if they have any new ones they've done since then, because new things have come out, right?
Okay, yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Because
Yeah.
that was super helpful, because they've already got it, like, I don't know who did it, but they were fantastic, and they broke everything down, and it's a nice little copy.
It's nice to think to use
Yes.
on this subject, for sure. Do you guys track?
We do. So we actually have someone who's in charge of it in our QA program, and we'll send it out to everybody, all the new standards, and then, or was up for comments, and then we have to look at them and then say, this is how we can, like, well, how we can meet it and what we need to change. So, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
All
That's
right.
what we're doing too.
Yeah.
Like, I just started with this program doing the same thing, so I've created everything and I'm tracking everything for our entire lab and trying to break it down individually.
Yeah.
And so those documents were super huge help with being able to actually bring it over into my spreadsheet and keep track of everything.
So the other thing is NIST gave ASB a big grant to help labs with this process. And I somehow got onto a committee that's in charge of this process. Jen Limoges from the New York. She's a toxicologist in New York. I don't know why I'm looking at these things.
I'll give you a-
But she works up there and she's heading it up. And they're gonna be doing a bunch of training. And my push is that they need to do the same training for lawyers and judges too, right? That needs to be a component of all this. We have a meeting tomorrow in the middle of a commission meeting, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it. But supposedly they're gonna be rolling out some resources to help folks, but I feel like Texas is probably gonna be already just grabbing the bull by the horns on it anyway, but we'll see. Maybe some of those resources will help folks. When they release them, we'll certainly talk about them in here under this same agenda item. So, yeah. That's all I think we have on OSAC. Does anybody else have anything on OSAC? Okay.
Okay, moving on to 8.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this one.
There you go. Here you go, Donna.
So the FBI. All right. An individual with the FBI who is a member of their general counsel's office, who is in charge of training all the FBI examiners, okay? That's what his LinkedIn profile says. Sent out a document instructing firearms examiners that if a judge tries to limit their testimony,
Like say in a Daubert hearing or something.
right, in an evidentiary hearing where they listen to the evidence presented from both sides and the judge decides that they don't think there's sufficient evidence to warrant like an individual identification type statement such as this is the gun that fired the bullets that were removed from the body, that they should tell the judge that if their testimony is limited in that way, that it would be committing perjury. Yes. So this was sent to me because it was sent to all of the AFSCME membership in the whole country, including people here. And I just was so shocked when I read it. So we have issued a statement basically telling people, if you work in this state, do not listen to any of that. And here's what the law is. And so that's what this is. So I hope
This has
everybody-
already been issued.
Yeah, it's on our website.
I love this letter. I mean, I know this is my last day. This is maybe my proudest moment. This is fantastic, right? I mean, I want to suggest, I'm not going to make a motion, but that you go a little bit further. And as the committee file a formal grievance against this guy, he's a licensed attorney somewhere, and maybe create a licensed committee Luddite Award or something and give it to this guy. You know what I'm saying? This guy needs to, I mean, put it on his Facebook page, put it in LinkedIn. Is there?
So I know that there are people not in this, within this state, but people who are paying attention who are concerned about whether he should be licensed to practice.
Yes.
He's
It's
based on
ridiculous.
this.
Incorrect information.
And so what happens with that, I think we'll see. But we felt really strongly that it needed to go out, and it has gone out. And because one of the alarming things to me, like I read this and I thought, this is really crazy, but what was alarming to me was that it went from the FBI to a state level examiner, not anyone in Texas, who said, this lawyer has graciously put together these tips for us. Send it out to everybody. And I was like, oh, no. We've got to be clear that this is inappropriate. There's a bunch of real ethical concerns about what it is that he's advocating from the perspective, from his lawyer license perspective, but also for our people. My personal view is that what this does is actually give you less credibility than actually being honest, and also allowing the judge, if they say like lesser included statements is all we're willing to accept after having heard arguments on both sides in an evidentiary hearing, then that's the judge's call, period. Like, so anyway, I will say that the feedback we've gotten about it is that a lot of the lab counsel, like people who serve as general counsel to the labs, were grateful to have it, because they felt like when they saw the thing that came out of the FBI, they're like, hey, all of you here in this lab, don't do that. That's ill-advised. It's wrong. And they would look at them like, well, if the FBI says it, like, it's like the mom dad thing, like, who are you? And so now that we put this out, they're forwarding this and saying like, we don't have a commission in our state, but this is the more sound view than what it is that was in that training document or whatever. So, and I will say that in preparing this, Judge Hervey was involved. Steve McCraw from Texas DPS looked at it and was involved. I mean, Judge Hervey, I think, was probably outraged about the usurpation of the judiciary, right? So a lot of people felt really strongly about it. And I almost put a footnote in here that said, like, dear FBI, how many things have you done that have sent us down this road where we end up having to do all this retroactive review and examination locally because you told us something that ended up being the exact opposite of what we should have been doing. Like, there are other examples of this in the not too distant past, right? So thank you very much, but this time we'll take our own advice. So anyway, all right, I'm done. But yeah. That's it.
It's
So,
one thing to have an opinion and to have a very strong viewpoint on something. Like, I believe very strongly that you can identify a trans person. I'm not gonna, however, impede on anyone and write up and send and say, if I can't say it is that person, then it's perjury. Yeah, I mean, that just seems ridiculous because of all
I
the
mean, like,
science that's out there now. And
if a judge asks you, does this fairly represent your opinion? If you have to say this instead of what you would normally say, and you say no, I mean, that's an honest answer. But you don't then go so far as to say, and I would be committing perjury, judge, if I said that. I mean, the judge is gonna make their decision one way or another on how you can make your statement. And that's it. That's
And
what.
just, so David Kay wrote a really interesting blog article about this, where he talked about just the concept of lesser included statements, like it must be true
Mhm, right,
that the weapon could have fired it.
Right.
If you also believe that it did,
right.
it must
Right.
be, right?
It's,
So,
it's a truth. It's a true statement. It's just not necessarily my full opinion, right? I mean, it doesn't fairly represent my opinion. My opinion is that that is the gun. If I have to say the gun can't be excluded, the judge
That's also
understands that,
true.
right? I mean, it is true. Yes, absolutely. But, so when you're in a hearing, the judge understands what you're saying, right? Like that, yes, judge, this is my opinion. This statement doesn't fairly fully express my opinion. And then the judge is gonna make his decision one way or another. I mean, based on all the other evidentiary stuff that you're presenting, if you can't present and the judge understands that, yes, you can say that, or they have some preconceived notion, that's it. That's what you have to say. Is what the judge instructs you to do.
and we're looking at the question of what you can and can't say separately.
Right, right. And that's,
what the
so is
data
OSAC.
shows.
OSAC has
Yeah.
their source conclusion and draft as well.
But I think also to note is like the federal courts operate differently than your state courts. And then the federal courts also have, well, they have the universal language for testimony and report writing.
Right.
That we don't
Right.
necessarily, we have, yes. So there's some of that as well for them for testifying.
But this
But-
contradicts that.
Yes,
That's
it
what's
does.
so weird about
Yes,
it.
yes. So, but then they just had that firearms webinar last week and
Yeah.
they touched on
They
this a little
did,
bit.
they
on the
did.
last
And
day.
they touched on it really well.
Yes, but it was also kind of like, I just was listening a little bit here and there on it. But whenever the federal courts, they were talking about as to like how you have to like present your old testimony or something to that, where like they're talking about that. you
We
have
need to go
to
back
be
and
able to-
rewatch
yes.
that one.
So it was kind of interesting to see as to what's the expectations from the federal level.
So what are you all looking for?
Yeah, I need to go back, but they talked about this particular.
They didn't
No.
mention it, but they were talking about what was
Yeah.
presented.
Yes.
That's what,
And
But
one of
they
the
weren't
questions that
promoting.
somebody asked was as to like.
No, they were not
About the whole like perjury, do you perjure yourself if you can't really express your true opinion
Yeah.
because the judge limits it. It was a very good webinar, like I said, I was like doing other stuff while I was listening to it, but
Yeah, she's like, let's play that out.
yes, it was the last day that they talked about it.
Yeah, it was good.
Friday.
I need to go, we were supposed to watch it. Did you end up watching it?
They
No,
kept
I
saying
watched
the
Friday.
videos will be ready in a couple of
Yes.
weeks.
So when they're ready, we'll watch.
Yeah.
Yes. Because the first part of it was a foundational part, where they're doing that foundational paper
Mm-hmm.
on firearms, and then the last part was talking about the courts. So
Yeah.
the first day and the last day, where I thought were.
The most.
I would agree with that. The stuff in between is not necessarily.
Yeah, it was like research.
Well, we
Oh, there was a lot of 3D stuff on
Yes,
that one day,
yes.
and then the other day was law enforcement
Yes.
stuff, which
I want
wasn't
to hear
very.
the Fridays.
Yeah, listen to it, it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
Peter, you
Okay.
got any updates for tackling? That's number 9 on our agenda.
You walked in right.
I walked in right.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Well, I sent around, let's see, obviously I sent around the memo that we're talking about there. I sent around just a little bit ago, asking for if anybody had had any conversations around American Rescue Plan Act funding for labs. So I need to talk with Brady a little bit, because Brady said DPS really didn't get any, but then apparently Steve McCraw was talking with Judge Herbie yesterday, and she said that they had gotten some, which would be a big difference. So I'm not quite sure there, but I know there are at least 5 states where some of that Recovery Act money has been used for labs. And certainly if I have any success with City of Houston, I will keep everybody posted about that, because that could be a big difference for labs of actually some access to some funds to help with things. And then I think for the meeting right after this, we've got a couple of new members. One is Katie Welch.
Oh, great. That's good.
Well, since Bill Davis passed away, she's acting. And I honestly, I don't know. They've had acting for quite a while. I'm not sure where they're at for permanent.
Can I interrupt you one thing on the federal money?
Yes.
So OCA, which is our parent agency, has gotten a bunch of money for case backlog.
Okay.
So we have a new director, administrative director, and they're waiting for the governor's office to release the money because it comes through the governor's office. So they're not sure exactly how much they have, and they also have some idea of things they need to do to expedite the backlog, including technology, purchases and other things. But I talked to Brady and I was like, well, if there is money that they have, that they don't have plans for, what would the labs be benefit from? But it has to be about case backlog reduction. Like that's the court, coronavirus related problems in the court system, essentially. So,
what wouldn't we need money for?
Yeah. So, we talked about, and I've already told the director that one suggestion would be money for casework backlogs, like in drugs, and we talked about DNA too, because I guess that's.
Well, it is, but DNA is the one place you can find some federal money. I think, most of the DNA labs have tapped some CBER money. And the place that all the labs struggle is everything other than DNA.
So drugs was the thing he
Drugs
raised.
is a big one, firearms is a big one, latent prints.
So she said that she wrote it down and we'll see what happens when the money comes in. But then the other thing Brady suggested, which I thought maybe you guys could talk about and tackle it today, is training for how expert witnesses can testify using the technology that's available. Now, they're not always going to be able to do that. Sometimes they need to appear. But when the parties agree that they can appear using the available technology, sometimes they don't, mostly because the judges are a little bit squirrely about how to do it. And so he thought if we could train the judges and their staff,
would be helpful.
He said, we recognize that sometimes we have to be there physically, depending on the case and what the parties think. But when everybody's okay with it, and the judge just isn't doing it because he's annoyed with the tech, that is a waste of everybody's time. So
I mean, that's certainly anything in that. I think other things that I've heard people.
And she seemed very amenable to that idea, because it really is like the connection between the courts and the labs.
The courts
Clearly,
are so wildly backlogged. I mean,
Yes.
Harris County is a just mind-boggling backlog, but it's not just Harris County. I mean, it's really pretty catastrophic how badly backlogged the courts are all across the state. And yes, anything to try and help navigate the hangups around testimony, being able to get people there to testify.
I know they've hired more judges.
Oh, yeah, they stood up a whole nother court for Harris County. Woo-hoo, one new court.
So I think the backlogs are pretty bad in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how the rural counties are doing, if they're any better or not, or what. But do you guys have a sense of that?
I think most places are pretty backlogged. The small counties that handle less than 100 cases a year, they're doing fine. But other than that, if you're at all a decently sized jurisdiction, people aren't getting trials.
No, I mean, some of it's a first come, first serve. I mean, I'm preferentially set in Barnett County and in Hayes, but Travis and Williamson, it's gridlock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
And
Kinney just shut
probably,
down again.
Yeah, I saw that.
you think disproportionately, you've got drug cases, gun cases are probably affect more than some other things. You kind of think what probably are most of the criminal cases, drugs, toxicology, guns, and maybe in about that order. Because you got so many misdemeanor DUIs. And it's not so much that maybe the lab can't turn around the alcohol or something like that, but the testimony around it and the interaction of the testimony and trying to deal with that aspect just really hamper the laboratory.
And then TIDC, the Commission on Indigent Defense, actually also said that they're getting federal money.
Huh.
And that to the extent we can talk about any benefits between, benefits for defendants and for indigent defense of, some aspect of that that connects to the labs, like how those cases would be benefited, then we can talk about projects there. But I'm not sure exactly what the link is, because I would imagine that for some defendants, the fact that the evidence isn't being tested
Is an advantage.
is not a bad thing, but for others, maybe it's a really bad thing.
Yeah,
The fact that it's not getting tested isn't so beneficial because it's not like the cases are going away because of it. They're just stuck
Mhm.
pre-trial, sitting with a case forever.
Do you think a lot of the cases will though have to go away? I mean, at least they may just have to triage some and just say, we're gonna.
You would think that that would be the
At some
case,
point, you're
right?
just
And
gonna
then
have to
people
dismiss.
would, hey, we need to move some of this stuff.
Yeah.
That is happening in some places, completely not happening in other cases.
Mhm.
And the thing that I think you'll find, especially in the labs, is a lot of times evidence was collected, say in a murder case, and there was a submission. But then the prosecutor has never reviewed it in the last 2 years. And then they look at it and go, oh, we need that thing that was tested. And then we start all over, right? And that gets in the back of the mind, or I don't know how that
I
works.
think from our perspective, what we've seen a lot of, and I imagine other labs are seeing this, is the courts have been stalled. We've been working on stuff basically from requests from the investigative end of things, and now that cases are progressing and the courts have started up, now you've got DA's offices with their hair on fire.
Right.
Because they're preparing a case, there's additional testing that they're looking for preparing a case. They're looking for everything to be rush, because they've got a court date that they're trying to meet.
Right.
And that's all landing on the labs at the same time everything else is.
Right,
So-
the judges are being really impatient. For
Yes,
what it's
they-
worth for you guys, it's
Yeah.
probably
Yes,
coming from
judges
the
are being very
judges.
impatient.
Yeah.
Everybody's in a hurry simultaneously.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
also, just to
We
put
can't
on
get any
radar
more
as far as
resets.
prioritizing, obviously you guys are the experts on it, but for what it's worth, I would say the DNA cases and the serious cases are gonna be the people in custody.
Uh-huh.
So if we're gonna prioritize, or try to prioritize what needs funding in order to help get people out of custody that have been in jail for 3
Yeah.
years, it would be those kinds of things,
Again, drug cases.
rather
a
than
lot of those,
DWIs, right?
DUIs,
Well, DUIs, people are out.
They're out, yeah.
they're out. Well, those are the ones that have money.
Well, a lot of the time, but not all.
Not all the time,
But the,
but drug cases are,
so I think what Brady was saying, we were talking, because I called Jarvis Parsons and asked him, him being from a mid-sized county, and he said, well, we don't have any issues with drugs because we don't have a drug backlog, because the arrangement they have with DPS, they have, focused resources on their stuff, but I don't think that's true for rural counties. And he said DNA is a huge problem for us, 18 months, it's a huge problem. He said if we could get any movement on the DNA, that would be super helpful. But then I asked Brady and he said, well, we don't want to outsource complex homicides to an out-of-state lab,
yeah,
because that creates all sorts of problems as well with testimony and
Yeah.
all these things. And so,
the out-of-state
but he
labs.
said if we could outsource more sexual assault kits, and then it would free up our time to work on the complex homicide. So, there's a bunch of different considerations. And, usually the parties don't want the evidence to go, out of state. to
Yeah.
some-
Well, and if there's even capacity out of state.
Right, which there may not
We've
even
moved
be.
away from using Bodie because their turnaround times are out 180 days. If they even are willing to take anything.
Could the money be used to help hire temporary staff that are a part of the organization? I mean, I don't know anything about it.
There's way too much training.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
problem is
Yeah.
bringing somebody up and getting them
Yeah.
to be able to be proficient. By that point in time, the funds have run out.
Yeah.
They haven't actually ever touched a
You
case.
paid them just to be
They didn't even
trained,
find it.
just to leave.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I respond to the email. I've got Bodie asking us if we can do reviews for them.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
No, thank you.
I mean, no one, everyone is struggling finding, particularly those DNA analysts that can deal with the review. Everybody's up against the wall on that, commercial labs included.
Well,
Just-
Brady told me Sig Site, they are asking them to take more stuff and they don't have capacity.
Yep, I mean, they're slammed. NMS on the toxicology side, NMS is slammed, their turnaround times are crawling up, and it's not like there's really anywhere to go anymore than NMS, so.
What about like support staff or technology? Is there anything like that that we could use to try and help them?
It depends, and it depends on the laboratory structure.
Yeah.
You know, some labs may already have that built in, some labs it would be such a heavy lift to create that new process.
Right,
that
sure.
Yeah.
It's just one of those questions that it may benefit some people, it may not others.
I mean, trying to get courts more comfortable and willing to use remote testimony tools is, I think that's not a bad idea.
He said,
'Cause-
because the amount of time they spend sitting in the hallway.
Yep.
and
Oh my
Driving
gosh.
to
Oh,
the
yes.
courtroom.
Oh, yes.
Driving,
Plus, your analysts have to be monitored, so at least one testimony, you've got somebody else sitting there with them all day after long.
and he said that, for them, because the state's so big, they have to go
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
drive 10 hours. I mean, maybe 10's an exaggeration.
So
but
I'll tell you,
6 or
yeah,
something.
for DPS, 'cause it depends on how we're set up. So in Austin, if you have some disciplines like such as GSR, forensic documents, APHIS, that they're only in Austin and they serve the whole entire state. But otherwise, we have, 16 locations that do house different disciplines, so they have smaller areas. But the GSR, and GSR testifies quite a bit. And GSR, so that's how we're actually approaching now the Rescue Act, is like we're trying to approach it with the GSR component, because our GSR cases, like, they skyrocketed
Yeah.
in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's just like, I mean, we have a huge GSR.
Whole
like,
thing's
intake.
done just when.
Yes, yes. So that's how we're like, so just the other day, Alice asked me to compile more information in regards to the GSR.
Yeah, you see this little cloud of smoke here that's donuts because they're,
What we saw was our drug submissions went down by about 30%.
yeah.
Seriously, and I think a lot of it was like
Travis County.
officer discretion. They're like,
No, thanks. Yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
our drug submissions went down by 30%, starting, March 2020. The other ones basically have either shown no change or even GSR and fires has seen an increase.
So like weed and stuff, is it just attributable to the?
Everything's.
We get a lot of requests for marijuana. still.
Are those
Really?
like?
But we have threshold values, so it has to be above a certain threshold because the district attorney's office is going to pursue it or whatnot. Our county is still, our agencies are still interested in,
How much of, are you saying
Large
that are
amounts.
marijuana that's part of a probable cause?
that we don't know. You know,
That's most of what we've got, our marijuana that are part of probable cause. And usually, probably the bulk of that is unlawful carry. And it's unlawful carry because it was marijuana that's associated with firearms, so. If it's not
So then
marijuana,
you
it's
get
not
the
unlawful carry.
firearm and James gets the
Yeah.
marijuana to.
Luckily, they don't expect us to testify most of the time for functionality only in
Yeah.
Harris County. They don't care. So luckily, that is not the burden for us.
And
So do you guys
also,
still do distance determination?
We don't do it.
distance?
Mhm.
Okay, so, well, anything else from Jacqueline?
the other thing we had on the agenda was to try and wade back into actually like making TechLab like an actual entity instead of 12 nerds in a room. So we have like an actual like incorporation is a.
I thought you already had it.
No.
we've discussed it for
We've discussed
years.
it for years and it's never occurred, so it's just 12 nerds in a room.
But you're very effective. Jacqueline is the Texas Association of Crime Lab Directors.
I saw it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm trying to catch up.
Yeah, but I have seen, I think my logic on it and the discussion that I'll offer is at least the last legislative session, I'm starting to see more staffers that are like, oh, where's your website kind of thing, and just, that sense that it's actual an organization. So having that incorporation as a real entity, and even if we can muster enough resources to put a page up, would be helpful heading to the next legislative session. And that's the other thing I was going to mention to everybody. I just got approached by the city of Houston to start talking with them about what we want to put forward in terms of legislative things.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, I will give city of Houston, they have been very helpful with me about basically going with me about forensic issues. So it kind of helps us that I've got city of Houston as the lobbying entity. It gets me in a lot more doors than me standing in the hallway waving my hand. But if there are things that we need to start thinking, I need to get them some framework here about the 1st of March. Because it starts to be here this summer.
Yeah.
A lot of the
No,
heavy
absolutely.
lifting on starting to draft bills and things like that.
So it feels like exhausting to ask this question, but the stuff that didn't happen. I guess we'll see if they, I mean, I don't even know.
I mean, we need to be ready to say, here's the things, if there's any window that shows up. I mean, that's this game, is you have stuff in hand for when the window opens up and you're still there standing at the end of the day.
I bet there's gonna be a lot around Delta H, but I feel like that's already, like, that's just left,
Just shoot me.
it's just left the barn that, whatever the saying is about things leaving barns, that's, like, if you go anywhere, there's Delta H everywhere, like, you go to the pharmacy and it's.
Well, and there is soon going to be THCP and THCM and THCO. I mean, it's just gonna be a snowstorm. of these things.
So how do you even, like, you don't, I guess is what you're trying to say to them, it's just not, it's not viable, feasible to keep. Well, whatever. All right. We'll take
Yeah,
it later.
yeah, yes. Yes.
Was that the last agenda item?
Future meeting scheduling, looks like.
April 21.
Same place, unless something
Crazy happens.
crazier
What
happens.
would you?
Right.
What could be crazier?
I don't know how much crazier we can get, but April 20. That is San Jacinto Day. Well, that's a skeleton free day for us, but we rarely take our skeleton day. Does anybody have an issue with being here for San Jacinto Day? No.
It's my son's birthday.
The
but-
week
Oh,
before is.
no, really?
It's fine. It's a Thursday. Yeah, he's gonna be at school anyway.
All right, as long as you get home for dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
What week?
I was just saying the week before is Easter, so that's good. It's not Easter.
And Lynn and Lee, this is probably obvious, but I will likely be on maternity leave. I better be, I should say.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, Callie. I hope it
Yeah.
goes super smooth.
My toddler doesn't really speak real English yet, so she has no idea what's coming. So that's the biggest.
That's the biggest thing for sure.
Yeah.
So still probably around 10:30.
If that's a good time, I mean, we can do it earlier, but we feel like a lot of people like to drive in the morning and not necessarily have to stay over.
The traffic was, especially today, was great, so
Mhm.
I'd rather keep it further back on the
Hearing
start.
the traffic was great is unusual. So
There was
that-
not one stop on 35, and that
That's
hasn't
great.
happened in years.
I was amazed when I drove in. I hit Elgin and it was like, there's no traffic. What's?
Aren't there a lot of schools canceled, like in San Marcos and?
San Antonio was all closed, so. I mean,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so all the roads were, it was nice.
That probably will never happen.
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
So if we can manufacture another weather.
Yeah. Another event.
But not an ice apocalypse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not wish that on ourselves.
A threatened weather event that doesn't materialize.
Right.
Next thing is just scare public comment. I don't think that we have Anyone from the public?
Anybody from the public?
Anybody from the, everybody knows Dr.
Right.
Noble?
Mike's one of our commissioners.
Oh, great.
Are you gonna be able to come tomorrow?
I will be there. Yeah.
You're welcome to sit in with the tax lab meeting too. but
Sweet.
Right now. I need to
And
figure out how to
our
get connected to our, yeah.
13.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. My
I
final
second.
motion.
Thank you, Bill.
So thank you, Bill.
My pleasure.
We'll miss you, Bill.
Okay, so we
Thanks
have
for
a
your
motion by
service.
Bill to adjourn. We've got a second by Donna. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
All right. So what do I
Bill,
need
we're
to do?
gonna
Yes,
miss you.
Oh,
We're
thank you
gonna
very
miss
much.
Bill. I'm glad that I gave you something